It's still a hurricane, as far as I'm concerned, at the beach. It is officially a 70-mile-an-hour tropical storm, but that's the core. This is the reality that we're feeling west of the center, and this is because the storm is transitioning to more of a hybrid low. We talked a lot yesterday about the cold front kind of got wrapped up in the circulation, and we're starting to get some of the dry air helping to translate these wind gusts down to the ground. This is our live Doppler, 79, 85, 86, and this is at about 3,000 feet off the ground, not at the water surface, but the dry air, or not the dry air, but the dry air aloft is helping these raindrops to translate this down. We just had a wind gust 85 at New Smyrna. Hurricane. So that's what we're dealing with. That's why things are so exacerbated from a storm surge perspective along the coast right now. So you are getting hammered, and because of that, 4 to 6 feet of surge. This is just below what we had with Matthew, which was a Cat 2 off our east coast back in 2016. So we're getting similar effects here. It just continues to get worse as the storm is working to the north, at least 1 to 3 feet. We're in high tide right now, and we've had extensive rainfall. They just discontinued the flash flood emergency, and I've been here 26 and a half years, never had a flash flood emergency, much less a couple of them, but that's because we've had these excessive 16, 20-inch rainfall amounts, and this is just a radar estimate, 18 and a half, 20.6, just incredible totals here. This is what we told you, unfortunately, what happened. I hate it when we know it, but that's why we had the extensive talk about the flooding threat from this, about 15 inches plus. The heaviest rain continues to move offshore, but we're still getting some of these wraparound bands here. Again, when you have the rain, you have the mass of the raindrops. It translates that wind down to the ground. If you don't have the rain, it's just kind of breezy, but it is really getting hammered over here. And we have the high wind surge coming in right now along the East Coast as well. Just light showers down to Apopka and Orlando. When's it going to end, Tom? I've had that all day today. Probably by 5, 6 o'clock, we'll have the bulk of this coming through, but you still see the onshore wind right now. Cassie, they actually went up on the wind speed here. It's not a hurricane officially, but it is for us.
Yeah, you know, it is. Winds officially for Ian, 70 miles per hour, moving to the north-northeast, 9 miles per hour. Some of the latest stats that came in for us. Still moving at a crawl, keeping that heavy rain just pounding our coastline that you heard Tom mention. You can still see the track of this, and look at it. It actually strengthens again as it continues out into the open Atlantic. Back to a Category 1 storm, which again, not very far away from that as we stand now, and that continues to make its way towards the north, eventually impacting the Carolina coast. So if we continue to track Ian for us as we head through the next 24 and 48 hours. But Tom just showed you the same graphic, storm surge, and I actually wanted to pull in some of our information coming over from the coastline. This is our Daytona Beach camera. It's taken a beating. We're actually kind of on freeze frame here. You can see, though, if you take a look at the bottom, that is what was the flags. The camera no longer mounted on its camera mount. And really for the first part of the day, as we had some live feed coming in from this, we could see the winds continuing to kind of roll this camera around over in Daytona. But then if we also talk about some of the buoys and some of the wave heights, these are some of the gusts Tom was mentioning. You can see up in Daytona, a wind coming out of the north, a 60-mile-per-hour wind gust down near NASA. We've got winds right at around 25, definitely not as strong. But again, as we get off towards the coast, you start to get into these green shadings. That's where we're getting 8+ feet for some of those wave heights. Obviously, they're much higher the further out we go, but onshore, we're easily in that 6 to 10-inch wave height range. So as we go through the day today, a lot of our northern coastal communities are going to continue to feel some of these big impacts from this storm system. This is the Daytona Beach outlook as we go through the remainder of this afternoon and into the evening. Rain holding as we head through the next couple hours. The flooding concerns, that means it continues, and the winds, we'll continue to start to see them shift a little bit as this pulls off, but we're still looking at 50-mile-per-hour wind gusts for the remainder of this afternoon. Now, as we head back to Orlando.
81 mile an hour in Daytona right now, okay. 81.
Yeah, whew. So right. Daytona, again, coastal Volusia, coastal Flagler, you're going to be in for kind of a beating when it comes to the rain and the wind as we head through the day today. Moving back to the metro, we do have some of those outer bands still moving through, but notice the rain chances dropping off as we head towards the late afternoon and evening. A lot of people hoping for the rain to come to an end as we continue to watch the flooding and the evacuations. And then also notice the winds, definitely not as strong. but we still have those wind gusts in that 30 to 40 mile per hour. But even in the metro, within the last hour or so, we've had some 50, 60 mile per hour wind gusts. So as this storm system slowly pulls away from us tonight, we will start to see those winds subside for us as well. But we continue to monitor this as it pulls away, continuing the great impacts for Central Florida. And then we're going to start to gear more towards the recovery of this. Greg and Kirsten.
Really is that. And, you know, when we think about what's happened down in Fort Myers and with, again, that surge and those images that we've seen, a lot of that surge will go back out to sea. Here in Florida, in Central Florida, we have to wait for the percolation many times to happen for the water to go down into the soil. The soil already soggy, and we'll talk with our meteorologist more about that. But there are 3 live cameras to your left of your screen, and we also have reporters fanned out in the poor folks in Orla Vista. You go all the way back to Hurricane Donna, which was 1960, and I found some publications today where residents back in the 1960s, when they went through that, had massive flooding. Then you had Irma with massive flooding for Orla Vista. This morning, when they woke up at 6 o'clock, flooding. At 4 o'clock this morning, there was no flooding. So those rescues are continuing. We have a crew there right now as well.
It's quick. Yeah, we have Jared Oliver there. He's been there for quite a while talking to residents who are getting rescued in the Orla Vista area. Jared, what are you seeing there now?
Yeah, these rescue crews continue to just help these families get out of there. I was told that they've rescued about over 200 people down there. There is an in-suites down there that had about 200 people. They've gotten most of them out. I don't have a definite number as to how many they've gotten out of there. As you can see, the boat crews continuing to go down there. 30 minutes ago or so, we saw some military trucks go down there because the water is so high. One of the firefighters were telling me it's chest level, so their trucks couldn't get down there. So they sent like these really big military trucks down there to go down there in that deep water. We've seen the pets, we've seen the families. People are coming out of here barefoot. I mean, the rain. It's quite an unfortunate situation. I've spoken to some of the other residents. They said that this area normally floods a lot when it rains and when it rains hard. So this is obviously more of an exaggerated situation, but these crews are continuing to help people come out of there. They've rescued about over 200 people so far. And you can see, you know, they're still trying to communicate and navigate and trying to figure out how to get these people out of here. But like I said, as you can, well, here's another crew coming up right here. Another boat crew rescuing more people. I was also told they've rescued about 40 animals in totality. There are several people still down there. Like I said, chest level water. And
my goodness.
Yeah. It's quite the scene, guys.
Pardon me. You mentioned in-suites. Are we to believe that there was a hotel or motel area that people reside in there in the Orla Vista area? Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, Greg. One of the firefighters was telling me there's some sort of hotel or motel down there that had about over 200 people down there, and they were able to rescue most of them. The military crew has been out here since about 4:30 a.m. this morning. So they've been out here. We saw them for the first time about 45 minutes ago. But yeah, there is something down there. There's some sort of motel or hotel unit down there that had a lot of people, and obviously the residents who live down here as well, Greg.
Jared, it's Kirsten here. I just want to ask quickly, for those who are just joining us this afternoon, what's the feeling you're getting from those who are being saved in these rescues?
Well, the feeling is it's cold out here. Obviously, I mean, you see these people walking in knee-level water. I mean, they're...
Signal grabbing right there. As we establish that, and again, we're dealing with digital signals that are also using cell towers. And so as we reestablish that, and that's fine that that's a freeze frame. What Jared, one of his interviews, to your point earlier, said that one of the victims of this flooding went to bed, didn't sleep great, but at 4 o'clock in the morning, there was no flooding.
Right.
And that's the definition of flash flooding. And then when she was awakened by the noise of her neighbors outside. At 6 a.m., they looked out and it was up to their cars and into their homes. And again, these people have dealt with this. Victoria Siplin, who's the commissioner of that area, has demanded answers, demanded help. They've said they were going to put pumps after Irma. They were going to redig some of the retention area. But it's such a low-lying area that when you have an historic flood like Donna and now this one, 100-year floods, there's really no place for the water to go but down into that basin of the Orla Vista area. And unfortunately, those folks, again, are dealing with that now. And it's already an economically challenged area.
Right.
And it's not as though they have the resources, many of them, to rebuild quickly or to find new housing. And so this story will go beyond today. They will go to those shelters with basically the clothes or whatever is in their backpack, or we've seen garbage bags. That's it. So our community will have to respond. We'll have to find some more housing for them. We saw some of the people during Irma that all of their drywall was ruined, and they needed to find people to come in and replace that if they had the insurance or the ability to hire those contractors.
And we all know what the insurance crisis when it comes to housing insurance, what the state that is in right now in our state. It's only time will tell how that kind of evolves as people start putting in their claims. But these aren't the only.
I want to ask Tom one question too before we go
please.
to Demi. Tom, I talked about the way that our soils work. It's very sandy here. Unlike Fort Myers, where that's a storm surge and that can go back out to sea, here we've got to wait for that water to go down or find a path of least resistance. How long does that take?
That's going to be weeks, month or more. If you've ever flown in, when we fly into Orlando, it's just a sea of lakes, retention ponds. Most of these are sinkholes that have filled in naturally over time, and some are man-made. But when you add this much water into our holding area and coming off of a very wet last couple of months, there's nowhere really for that to go. Some of it will work its way down to the aquifer naturally, but we have so much runoff. It's probably going to be at least several days of additional runoff into those. So we're at least a week or two. This is unprecedented for me, though, 27 years. So.
And there's no way to pump your way out of this mess, is
Where are you
there?
going to pump it? That's the thing.
Yeah, so many good people are going to ask for, where's our pumps for our neighborhood? There's nowhere to put that water. I wanted to jump in with you on that because it times into that story, but we're also going to go along the coast right now where you said there is still a hurricane.
Well, and to your point, Tom, about this, we're just getting an update here from Flagler County Emergency Management. They're saying they're expanding their evacuation order right now. Zone Z, which is the Woodlands area, they're asking all residents to leave immediately in that area. Again, if you're listening to us on the radio and you no longer have power, just so you're aware, Flagler County is expanding their evacuation order, Zone Z. And that is a Woodlands area. Flagler County urging all Woodlands residents to leave immediately. So if that's an area you're in, if you're hearing us on the radio, please leave. That is what the county is now asking of you.
Going to be windy and brutal over there in Flagler County as the storm continues to pick up that speed off the coast.
I was showing this earlier. This is our live Doppler 9 radar. These are live updated wind speeds over the last 15 minutes. 75, it just pixel queried a few spots. 75, 82, 87. And this is what is making its way into Daytona Beach right now as the hurricane. It's not a hurricane tropical storm, but for us it's a hurricane just because of the way it's put together. Demi Johnson is over in Daytona Beach, who's been ducking in and out of this particular storm cell, guys, and she's been dealing with these winds as well, and it's not going to go away until probably late tonight for her.
Yeah, let's go out to Demi right now. She has had to move her location to a parking garage for safety for her and her crew. And Demi, what are you experiencing now? You heard Tom's report about those wind gusts that are 85 miles per hour.
Greg, you can probably see some of those wind gusts hitting me right now, and we're in a parking garage, so we're protected from a lot of what's going on down on the ground. Again, you said we had to do that for our safety. We had some damage to our car. We had a lot of debris flying around, so we thought it was best to kind of hunker down up here while the winds are still strong. Notice how water is coming off even into the parking garage. That's obviously a mixture of the storm surge, it's a mixture of rain, and it's just sort of starting to pond in the parking garage. We're going to show you some video right now. We figured all of this wasn't smart to do on live TV, but we were able to take a little walk in between live shots to show you what was going on the ground. You can see some drains probably right now, maybe not I don't know where the video is, but they were backing up. They weren't able to suck all the water down. You saw a lot of debris. And what we noticed is in between the buildings down when we were down on the ground, those were creating sort of a wind tunnel. So that's where the wind was the most powerful and the toughest. We didn't try to walk past that. Again, we're trying to stay as safe as we possibly can up here and kind of hunker down until some of these strong winds pass. But we saw the water levels. They were really high up over the steps. We saw a lot of businesses damaged, some broken doors off the hinges, a lot of debris. So still pretty windy here. Still pretty crazy. So we're gonna hang out here as long as we can, and we'll get to the ground and show you more whenever we feel like it's safe.
Yeah, and Demi, I know you were there yesterday as well with your photographer, Mateo, and you all dealt with, it's almost like Groundhog Day in terms of this is what those folks experienced yesterday. There has been no let up in Volusia County, and to me, that is one of the stories. The wind story in Volusia County is wild because this has been pounding that Volusia County coast for hours and now into the second day, right?
And we've heard that all morning long. I mean, when
Yes.
Demi was live at 4 in the morning this morning, she actually just put the mic up to the wind and you could hear it howling. And then she, of course, had to go back into this garage because it was unsafe and she would go back to the ground when it was safe. But with these wind gusts being what they are right now, she had to go back to the garage. And even in the garage, we could hear it. We could literally hear the wind howling in that garage. So, Demi, I mean, that back and forth you've been experiencing, not just you, of course, but those living in Volusia County, even though they're indoors, just kind of the constant battering of wind and rain in that area.
Yeah, and I'm not sure. I haven't had a moment to look at what the power situation is, but I know the hotel we're staying at is without power, and that's something else we were seeing on the ground is that sparking electricity. And I'm sure, obviously, the wind has a lot to do with that, and you'll think for a second, it's okay, I can walk around, everything's fine, and then that big gust will come through. And I told you guys this earlier, if you're just joining us now, I got knocked over at one point, which is why we decided to come back up here, and I couldn't believe the way that felt. It knocked me over and it continued to push me for a little bit, and then we were able to get up and get safely back to shelter here.
Well, thank you for that, and thank you to Mateo. And I know that you guys are a great team and staying safe. We're going to come back to you, but the unrelentlessness of the wind and that wind event for Volusia County, and it's a rain event and a rising water event in Osceola County.
Right, and that's exactly where we found Sabrina Maggiore, who has been watching areas there with people being rescued, just like, of course, we had Jared Oliver in Orla Vista, some rescues there as well. The one moment I thought was so defining this morning was seeing a family being rescued, a mother and a child smiling after being rescued and waving. It's just so powerful. So let's get back out to Sabrina Maggiore in Osceola County for us this morning. Sabrina, what's the situation, the dynamic there now?
So at this point, it looks like they've kind of stopped the water rescues in this particular area. Just to give you a reminder, we're at the intersection of Central Avenue and Columbia Avenue, where we've seen a number of rescues. As you mentioned, we saw families with their belongings in their hands after being rescued come off of these airboats. We saw about 7 boats unload with families, and we were told at last check there were 51 families who were being 51 people who were being taken to shelters. The nearby shelter right across from here is full at this time, so we're told that's why they're loading into those Lynx buses and heading out. And we're watching now as first responders are clearing the scene here. Josh, if you take a look to my left, we're seeing the Kissimmee Fire Department vehicle go ahead and leave from this apartment complex. We have also seen families who did not need to be rescued from this particular complex here, Park on Central, but have decided now is the time to go ahead and head to a shelter as the water level has either continued to rise or kind of ebb and flow at this point. So we're watching as these families are kind of moving forward. You can see they have some of their belongings with them and are either, you know, loading onto those Lynx buses, heading to other parts of the county, heading to shelters, or meeting up with family members at this point. But this was something we were kind of reporting on earlier today, and as you mentioned, it was very heartbreaking to see so many people affected by this. Again, at least 51 people loaded onto those Lynx buses. We're now watching as first responders are heading off down Columbia Avenue, so I'm not sure where they're going, but we know that there are many other rescues that need to happen still at at this point where we are in Osceola County. So for right now, that is kind of our latest update. We're going to continue to safely drive around. Again, you should not be driving, but for our purposes, we're trying to show you this. That's why we are driving right now. We're going to continue to do that safely and try and show you more of what we're seeing, as we understand this flooding is pretty widespread here in Osceola County at this point. So for now, reporting live in Kissimmee, I'm Sabrina Majori. Let's head back to you guys in studio.
As I was watching the great coverage that was provided by Sabrina and Darlene Jones and Alexa Lorenzo in a couple of hours ago during those rescues, the ability for our reporters to speak bilingually was, to me, so crucial in that instance, and the way that Sabrina was able to tell that story of a family coming in on an airboat ride. Typically at Wild Florida, you look forward to, you know, maybe
not in this case.
Getting on an airboat. In this case, you could see the fear, the sadness, the concern, the worry in those faces. And we're going to show you some of those clips if you've missed it. But right now, we want to show you some more of how this story is a wind story and a rain story and flooding, depending on where you are in our viewing area.
Right. So in Osceola County, for example, people at Tiffany Square Apartments in Kissimmee, they experienced some devastating flooding early this morning.
Yeah, and despite all their preparations, because we know they've really tried, their homes and belongings soaked today. The entire first floor of this complex flooded out, and residents who sheltered in place are now displaced from their apartments. One resident compared this flooding to Puerto Rico during Hurricane Fiona.
Like this time, but was years ago when I was still living in Puerto Rico, but over here, this is the first time that this is so bad right now. They got, I think it was Fiona, that's the one we got. We got Ian.
Outside, everything was fine. He woke me up about 3:30 in the morning, and when I opened the door, water was rushing in. Everything was wet, so I went with him. It was dark, you can see nothing. Now, you see the aftermath.
Yeah, and that resident has 6 inches of standing water in his apartment. He has lived at Tiffany Square for more than a decade, but now obviously will not be able to stay there in the short term, and he says that even in the long term, he will go. And this Kissimmee area, because, you know, they deal with, you know, the outflow, and it's part of the whole Everglades water system. So this amount of water that you're seeing here, experts say this is not going down. This could actually go up, not just because of the more rain that we're seeing today, but because of all the tributaries that connect right there to, again, an area that's already saturated.
It's similar to like a house settling, right? So the water is continuously settling. It has to go somewhere, and it's continuing to pool, rain or no rain. You see people here walking through, you know, almost waist-deep water there. In Sabrina's live shot earlier, because Sabrina was at this scene earlier this morning, we actually saw people walking around barefoot. So it's been really tough to see what's happening out there in Osceola County.
And speaking of that, let's take a look at the HCA hospital. This is in Osceola County as well, and some drone video. This used to be known as Osceola Regional Medical Center, and look at this. It is now a waterfront property, completely surrounded by the rising waters. This is drone video showing you the impacts here near the intersection of Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard and Rose Avenue. Shelters in place, and first responders have been rescuing people that need it. But that is, again, the story in Kissimmee. So depending on where you are, some it's the power outage, some it's trees down, some it's the damage from the wind, some are still feeling what Tom says is really still close enough for government work, as he likes to say sometimes, the impact winds that would be similar to a hurricane. So I know it's tropical storm force winds, but certainly the people along the coast are feeling that pounding.
A waterfront property, as you said, but not in the good sense.
No.
Right? Not in any way that we want to see. And, you know, you talk about that happening at a hospital. That's first responders' #1 go-to, right? They have to take people who are in emergency to a hospital, and maybe that area is impassable right now, even in their, you know, industrial vehicles with the wheels that are necessary and the rescue efforts underway. It's tough to see where those people are going to have to go.
All right, let's, speaking of Osceola County and those rescues, let's bring in the Osceola County Sheriff, Marcos Lopez. He is on the phone with us. And Sheriff, thank you so much for being with us. The images that we're seeing on TV are really just overwhelming. How is your staff doing? How are the deputy sheriffs doing? And how is the overall operation going when it comes to rescuing all those folks who are now in flooded out homes?
Yeah, we have different agencies here working. We've been here since daylight, and people are just calling. The main problem we had was there was power still here. People are at about a foot deep of water. We just had KUA cut the power so we can relax them because they started to come out because they were panicking that they were going to get electrocuted. It's going to be a long night. I think Pebble Point has probably about 2,000 residents, and I believe they've pulled out about 200. Also, we have people with medical conditions. The National Guard's on the way. They're going to help us. We're going to be working late into the night trying to get everybody out of here.
Sheriff, is this, I know you all have prepared, and we know Shingle Creek has, an area that has provided that area with flooding to historic levels during Irma, but have you in your entire career seen or anticipated something with this magnitude that you're now facing right now?
No, not like this. I mean, we have pockets of areas that have water, but this whole subdivision, just the water's just going into the homes, and we have a lot of elderly people that have been here for years, and they're kind of panicking. We pulled out veterans, and then we're getting the medical calls. So we have the FWC here, Florida Highway Patrol, fire department's been great. We have our guys, our agricultural units, and we're just shuttling people from this spot down to, we have the Lynx buses here, taking people to shelters. Everybody's helping and pitching in to work together to get them out of here as fast as we can. But like I said, we've been here since about 8. I think they pulled out about 200 people.
And this Pebble Park, Sheriff, you're at
Pebble Point.
Pebble Point.
It's going to be a long night pulling out everybody else.
And Sheriff, here, Kirsten Delgado here. I just have a question regarding overnight. Obviously, your agency is no different than others. You couldn't respond until it was safe to do so. Tell me, did you receive a lot of calls overnight of people you couldn't get to at the time because it was too unsafe?
No, actually, the night was quiet. I think as soon as it got morning and people started realizing the waters were raising, we started getting the calls. But now, here it's just one of the worst ones we've seen with the most amount of residents.
Is Pebble Point in a very low-lying area? I'm looking at some imagery here that, like many of the places that we have in Central Florida, there are retention ponds that are supposed to be able to, hold the water on a typical storm or in a typical year. This is nothing but atypical. Is this a problem area that you anticipated? Was this a flash flood? How do you best describe what happened there at Pebble Point?
No, we didn't anticipate it to be like this. We expected certain areas to accumulate water, but not in this magnitude. So, like I said, we'll be here just pulling people out. They're starting to panic, and they want to come out on their own. Their little cars are getting stuck, and then we have to take them out of the cars. We just want them to stay home. We're working it. Anybody that has a medical emergency, as soon as they call 911, we put them on top of the list and go in there and pull them out. We've already pulled some elderly people, some with open heart surgery, some veterans. Like I said, it's going to be a long night. We got more help on the way. It's just going to be a long process. And,
Sheriff, just to be clear, Pebble Point, is that in the Buenaventura Lakes area?
Yes, it's a BVL, Osceola Parkway, Simpson Road. It's around in that area.
Okay, because I'm looking at that area now, and there are several bodies of water around there. So it's understandable with all this rain that things would overflow, and you would have all that water in people's homes and people desperate to get out of that situation and concerned, and understandably so, about power in that area if they had power.
And Sheriff, just because we have a very bilingual audience, if you could give us about 30 or 40 seconds here on Channel 9 Live, the floor is yours to address not just the Pebble Point residents or family and friends who are concerned, but what do you say to those right now that feel panic as the water is rising, or panic because loved ones may be trapped, whether it's at Pebble Point or in another flooded area? Sir, if you could address our viewers in Spanish.
Que se mantengan tranquilos. La lluvia está parando. Yo no espero que la agua suba más alta de lo que está dentro de las casas, pero que se mantengan tranquilos. Ya hemos cortado la luz para que la gente no piense que se van a electrocutar. Y poco a poco vamos a entrar sacando a la gente. Tenemos muchas más unidades de rescate de camino. Si tienen un problema médico, que por favor llamen al 911 y le dejen saber que están en esta local, porque vamos a usar los recursos que tenemos aquí como prioridad para sacarlos a ellos primero. Y por favor no salgan en sus carros porque el agua es súper honda y los jeeps que están entrando se está tapándole encima de la puerta. Estamos esperando a la Guardia Nacional para que nos envíen más ayuda. Karma, y pronto vamos a hacer eso.
Muchas gracias, Sheriff. We appreciate you, Sheriff Lopez. I know that you and your team and all of those other resources are doing the best that you can. And thank you so much for spending this quality time with us in a time that none of us have seen. And again, Sheriff Lopez has been there for decades and responded to flooding and all sorts of emergencies. But again, this is unprecedented.
That's the theme that we're seeing in all of our counties, and we're hearing from all of the officials we've had on air this morning, is how unprecedented this flooding is. And just for our English-speaking viewers, our listeners right now, if you don't see us on television, he was just saying for those people to stay calm. He was saying that they have cut the power, like he told us, to areas where the houses are flooded, and that their rescues right now are priority. They do have agencies at the ready, that they're pulling in more people to get these rescues underway. Like I said, about 200 people have been rescued in that area right now, and that is the Buenaventura Lakes area, Pebble Point specifically. So, we're monitoring that area closely. We have several crews in the area, Orlo Vista and Osceola County, monitoring what has been a pretty devastating flooding event for that area.
Yeah, 200 out. About 1,800 more people to go. That's just Pebble Point. So you can hear the magnitude of that effort, bringing in FWC. Again, you also heard earlier in one of our news conferences, people are very concerned as well, and they should be, wildlife in those waterways, because now...
Of course. You just don't know what's underneath.
That potential. Let's go now to Lake Eola, and Channel 9's Christy Turner is live there now. And this is an area, too, that is typically used. They lower this so that other waters from throughout downtown Orlando can go into this body of water that used to be a sinkhole, but even Lake Eola is overflowing its banks, Christy.
Yeah, the water has crept all the way up here past the sidewalk. This is usually filled with grass, and now you can see it's filled with water. Lake Eola has overflowed. You can see the swans over here swimming in the extra water they now have right now because of all of this rain that was dumped here in downtown Orlando. This is really unprecedented flooding. You can see some people biking through it right now. Not the safest thing to do. We don't recommend doing that during the storm. And this is just wild to see. I talked to a guy who said he's lived here for 40 years and has never seen a flooding like this here in the downtown area and at Lake Eola. If you pan over to the right, it's a little hard to see from where we're standing, but right now, police officers have a portion of Robinson Street blocked off because the water has seeped onto the road there. And there's actually a car that's stalled out right now. But this is a spectacle to see. A lot of people have been coming out here to take pictures and video. This is something a lot of people have never seen before. And we're just waiting for that rain to finally stop. It's relentless. It just continues to come down. There are periods where we have some lighter rain, and then it starts to pick back up again. But this is what we are seeing, this unprecedented flooding right now here in downtown Orlando, one of several areas I've seen flooding since we first started reporting at 3 o'clock this morning, not too far away. On Summerlin Avenue, we had some flooding this morning, and we just drove by that about a half hour ago, and that's still underwater. In terms of the flooding here at Lake Eola, we've been talking to people who wanted to see this in person. Here's their reaction to seeing this flooding.
I mean, I've never seen it this high. It wasn't this high for Irma. It's shocking. In some parts, you're kind of like, wow, like...
Wow is right, and that was exactly my reaction when I pulled up on this. We were actually on the other side of Lake Eola near the amphitheater, and the water was all the way up to the stage. So just crazy flooding out here right now. So we'll continue to monitor the situation out here as more people come to check things out. But that's the latest here at Lake Eola. I'll send it back to you guys in the studio.
Excellent. Again, we don't want folks to go out there and do that, and who knows what's in that waterway. But the thing about Lake Eola, there's a series of about 5 various lakes / former retention ponds. They're all interconnected, and quite literally, the city of Orlando can turn the knobs to allow the water to go down and to fill back up. Well, there's nowhere for the water to go because they would then otherwise be able to release it. And so it's going to have to go down naturally. But this is an example. Everything is connected here, and there's nowhere for the water to go. So when you see the storm surge in communities, like in Fort Myers, for example, at least that water, that's not rain, that water can go back out to sea into the landlocked here, and there is literally no for all of this water to go, but down, the ground is also saturated.
And let me just set the stage who are listening to us on the radio and are not watching us on TV. Lake Eola, of course, around it has 4 roads, right? You have North Roslyn, you have East Central, you have North Eola Drive. And in Christie's shot, we saw the waters almost to one of those roads. That's how far extended the water has gone out beyond the lake itself. It's wild to see. So if you're listening to us, just picture that. Lake Eola expanded to the point where it's almost to the concrete road.
The swans were swimming at the pagoda, which is used for pictures and for weddings, and clearly is not in the water typically, but today it looks like a floating pagoda. Let's go now to Brevard County. Melanie Holt has been all up and down the county. She has been a veteran of covering these storms, and for her, it may be a flooding event later, but you have also experienced some incredible winds. You're there at Lillian Boulevard in Titusville to give us a look at what people are seeing right now. Mel.
We were headed to Indian River Drive when we came across all of this here. And this water goes back, well, several hundred feet. It's just completely surrounded this business. And I can also tell you, I took a look to see how high it might be down around this business. Right now, it's right up to the doorway. But if you look closely there, you can still see the water line where this water got right up above the bottom of the door frames there of this business. So just so much water out here. We came to this particular area because our own meteorologist, Tom Terry, and our whole weather center there told us that there were 15 inches of rain in this area. You can see it. Now, Sid is panning over now. There is a ranch that is just up the road here off of South Street. Now, we could see some areas that were dry here. It doesn't look like it got all the way back in the ranch, but you can see how much water is in this area right now. As a matter of fact, it's pretty amazing that there haven't been more reports of flooding damage in this area. But for the most part, I have been told, and I've been in contact with Brevard EOC, the city of Titusville, that the reports of damage given all of this rain have been minimal. That's not to minimize everything that has happened and those folks that are dealing with all of this right now. But I think here in Brevard County, there's still a sense of relief that the damage wasn't more severe. And there goes one of those wind gusts right now. I've also been in contact with NASA, Port Canaveral, and we've also had communication from the Melbourne Orlando International Airport. And I can tell you that damage assessments are underway right now. As soon as we have more detail about all of those different agencies, I'll have an update for you. Live here in Titusville, Melanie Holt, Channel 9, Eyewitness News.
All right, Mel, again, this story is different for everyone. Many times a hurricane is, just sheer devastation. We saw that with Andrew, where it just wiped basically out Homestead, just mowed down all of those structures. Here we have wind damage, we have rain damage, we have all of the flooding, we have more tropical force winds still pounding people along our Volusia County coast. It is quite the mixed bag. What a storm, and this is a storm for the ages.
And our meteorologists, our governor said this was going to be a major water event, and we all understood that in theory, right? But now we're actually seeing it in real time play out. So with that, I want to get over to our meteorologist, our team here. Tom, you've been at the ready here for us, and you've been very clear in saying that even though technically right now Ian is a tropical storm, we're still getting the wind gusts of 75 to 85 miles an hour, which are wind gusts sustained, of course, at Cat 1.
That's right, yeah. And a hurricane is sustained with gusts usually about 20 miles an hour faster. So this is a very strong tropical storm, but on this western side, where we still have the heavier rain coming through, we are seeing this bright green is all 80-mile-an-hour winds. And we've had several reports, New Smyrna, Daytona, you're getting hammered with 80, 85, 86. That continues. It will filter down. And as the rain gradually starts to break up here by mid-afternoon, I know that's your other question, was it finally going to stop raining? That will be here in about another 5 hours or so. But the storm moving offshore, right now 70 miles an hour. We do expect this to regain hurricane status, but as kind of a hybrid hurricane, it's been a really weird system so far. It's had some cold air mixed into it, which made the wind field get really, really big as it continues to move to the north now at 9 miles an hour. Very heavy rain continues. There's our live wind gusts, 64 Daytona, 54 in Sanford. So where you still have rain, you have that gustiness to the storm. And we talked about this yesterday, the dry air wrapping around. We have a cold front that's all gotten intertwined. This is just a weird animal. This is not supposed to have fronts in there, but Mother Nature's doing what it's doing. We still have a tropical storm warning. We still have a flood warning along the coast here with coastal surge issues. We're just still coming out of high tide. The flash flood emergency we had earlier today has been expired, but this has been unprecedented as we've been seeing amounts of rain. Cassie, you've also been watching this storm along with us.
Right, exactly. So we want to continue to watch just the track of this storm system. Like you mentioned, Tom, expected to actually re-intensify as it moves out into the open Atlantic. So again, you can see it spinning just offshore, just whipping that heavy rain and that rough surf, which I'm going to show you a little bit coming up here in just a moment. But you can see that track updating as we get to a Category 1, again, moving forward into this evening as it's just off our northeast coastline again, and then tracking closer towards the South Carolina coast as we get into early Friday morning with winds on the lower end of the hurricane scale when we talk about categories, but still a Category 1 storm headed towards the South Carolina coast by tomorrow morning. But if we talk about, again, that storm surge we were mentioning, next high tide, 11 p.m. We had it at 11 a.m., so we're starting to get into that cycle of pulling the seas out, but still about a 4 to 6 foot storm surge possible. That's why parts of Flagler County and northward have been in that storm surge advisory. So if we actually look at some of the buoy data, we can see some of that out there and take a look at some of the wave heights more in contour form, which gives us kind of a color depiction of how high those waves are as we head out to sea. And again, when you start to get into those lime green colors, that's getting 10, 15-foot waves. As we get a little bit closer, it starts to transition more into a teal to even blue. And you can see on the scale, that gets us more towards the 8 to 10-foot range. So easily seeing some very big waves crashing up on the coast of Volusia County and Flagler County. Again, you can see those wind gusts changing live. The data coming in live for us. Daytona Beach, the last wind gust there, 68 miles per hour. Now, I wanted to touch on this. We wanted to look at the St. Johns riverbed. I know you've heard a lot of that talk along the St. Johns River. So we wanted to see some of the actual points and give you some of the actual numbers as to where the St. Johns River is sitting in respect to the flood stage and really respect to where it's expected to go. So if we head up to Astor, you can see that's the dot here on the top. Currently, we're sitting at about 4 feet. Flood stage, though, right at 2.3 feet. So we're almost double the flood stage. And we're actually expected to see this continue to climb to about 4.6. That's the forecast, which is actually record levels up in Astor. So again, continuing to monitor that. DeLand, as we get a little bit further south, we're above flood stage there, not by much, but above it, and expected to climb all the way up to 5.5 feet, which is just under record stage. But again, some big flooding concerns along the St. Johns River. As we get down towards Lake Harney, current standing with the St. Johns River, sitting at about 9.25 foot. The flood stage is at 8 feet. And again, that number is going to be expected to continue to climb, close to almost 11 feet, and the record for flood conditions as we get closer to the Lake Harney location sits at 11.1 for the record. So again, these locations, we expect to see the number climb. The forecast for these numbers, we're expected to see that climb. Tom?
Yeah, I want to show you. I've just been working on the forecast. This is something I haven't even, we've been so focused on what's going on in the next 5 hours. But let me show you the forecast here. 64 tonight. This is the cool air coming in behind this system. Yeah, I know. That's what I said too. 81, 86. So we have some quieter weather to help the waters evaporate, recede, and just have better weather for us because so many folks are without power.
Yeah, well, without the AC. More than 2 million customers in Florida now. And you think about that, there are only 22 million total residents in Florida. So you take 2 million customers. Some of those are businesses, no doubt. And if you took 2 people per house, I mean, the likelihood that you don't have power is as great as the likelihood that you do right now. So the crews will also enjoy this weather as they begin to, again, continue that process of picking up the pieces.
And aside from that, the one thing I took away from that 5-day forecast, it was all sunny with little chance of rain, which is good for us because we need to dry out, but also a little hope to see some sun in the Sunshine State after this event. With that, we're going to go to Channel 9's Shannon Butler, who's been driving around Orlando. Shannon, what are you seeing around you?
So this is downtown Orlando. This is actually a little south of downtown Orlando. The Orlando Regional Medical Center is right here to my left. This is Lake Cherokee. Lake Cherokee is here. Lake Davis is here, just separated by just a block and a half or so. Well, now it is all one lake. Take a look back here. This is the Cherokee Park sign. You can see just how high that water is. That over there is a park bench. This park is kind of like a triangle in the middle here. It's very popular for people for their dogs, and they have workout classes here and stuff. You cannot see the park at all here. Those are the trees. This is full of grass here. I am actually standing in the middle of the road. If I walk this way, this is the beginning of the Lake Cherokee over here. It is all one now. There is a sidewalk that runs between where I am right now and this lake. This lake has overflown now all the way across this road over to Summerlin, and then over here basically connecting to Lake Davis. They're very small lakes. You can't boat on them. They're very, very small, but right now it is just one big lake in downtown Orlando. As we came here from the station just on the other side of the 408, there are pockets of flooding all over downtown where there are cars still stuck in the middle of these roads as they tried to pass before. We thought from when we left here earlier this morning, went over to Cimarron for that evacuation and back, that maybe the water would have subsided and it would be a little easier to get around, but that is not the case. My friends actually live just one street over, and they said the water is continuing to rise. It's not yet in their houses, but as it rises, you just sit there in your house and you watch the water come up and you watch the water come up and you wonder just when that water is going to stop. Now, the good news in this area, I live just a couple of streets down. I don't have water, but as you know, the tree fell on my house last night. There are other trees down here in downtown Orlando. But as we were coming over here, I did see one power truck. So it looks like the crews are starting to come out to assess what's going on here. There are a lot of customers in downtown Orlando right now without power. A lot of those because the transformers blew when all of this water started to rise. I have lived in downtown Orlando, either in Thornton Park or Delaney Park, for about 15 years. I have never, ever seen the roads like this. We get that heavy rain sometimes. There'll be pockets. I have never seen it like this. I have never not been able to get from the station a few blocks down to my house this way. I have never been able to not pass through here. And I know, Greg, you know this area well too. You've been here a long time. This is just one of those brick roads in downtown Orlando, and you can't see the road anywhere.
Yeah, and Shannon, excellent report there to show you how much water, and these are the lakes that we talked about, you know, Lake Eola and Lake Davis, and again, you know, Lucerne, all these are connected bodies of water. And Shannon, it's not like Lake Cherokee and Lake Davis are necessarily like abutting each other. They're not touching by any stretch. Now they're one, but we're talking about, you know, a pretty good bit of real estate with houses around that. Do any of the folks that live down there have any concerns that this is going to continue to rise and possibly encroach their property?
Well, Carrie, can you spin around here right now past everybody's coming out here to see? There is a house, say right here on the corner. You can see the water is up on their grass and up kind of on their walkway, but it's not inside their homes yet. Carrie Swinger, I'm sorry, Carrie, I know I'm probably giving you whiplash. Go right here. Can you see the person paddleboarding? He's going to come through, he or she's going to come through on this other side. You're going to see somebody on a green paddleboard. I just saw him come out of his house and get on that board right there. The houses just across here on Cherokee, they are big houses. A lot of the doctors from ORMC, Orlando Regional, that's how long I've been here, live along this street because the hospital is right there. They're very, very close to the hospital. Most of their houses, I can see at least from here, are built high enough where that doesn't seem like there is much water. It's only up to their driveway, so it looks like the houses have fared pretty well. There's actually a house on the corner here that I always thought was so close to the lake, and I wondered if they would get some water. But it looks like they're okay. But I can see, which you probably can't see this paddle boarder from where we are, but the paddle boarder has just gone down the street and is headed towards like Orange Avenue on that paddleboard, just like it's a regular lake. This place really has turned into one big lake. I think, let's see, there are between, Greg, where I am at Lake Cherokee, there's 2 streets before you even get to Lake Davis. So that shows you just how much this, Carrie, can you go down there? If you see past that green sign there, there is a sign over there that says Lake Davis. That's how far these lakes are apart. And now they're just one big connected lake. The ducks are swimming where the park normally is. We've got people on kayaks. I just never have seen this in downtown Orlando, and we've been through a lot of storms.
And the thing about this is, and what we have to know is that those lakes, while beautiful, Shannon and Kirsten, they're beautiful, and they're a part of course, just our great-looking city, but they serve a purpose to retain water. And now they can't even retain all the water. Compare and contrast, Shannon. 2004, you were in the heart of this for Charlie as it rolled through this basically the same area. And what we dealt with there were streets that were impassable not because of water, but because of trees. And so none of us have seen this in this location. We've seen trees, massive trees down, but nothing like this.
Yeah, this is a very different storm for me. When Charlie came through, when the sun kind of came up and you came out, you couldn't, there wasn't a street, I felt like, where trees weren't down somewhere along downtown Orlando. And it was very sad for people, right? These are beautiful, beautiful oak trees that have been here for decades and decades, beautiful trees that had come down. I'm guessing because of that, we lost a lot of that already. So most of those trees were down. It seems like we have seen some trees uprooted, but it seems that this definitely was much more of a rain event because we are talking about a lot of water, which helped with the destruction of people's properties, trees and roofs or smashing up cars. That seems to not be what we're seeing, at least in downtown Orlando, but it is the water. And as long as it keeps out of these homes, which it looks like for now, it has, then they will escape that destruction. And it's just right now just more of an inconvenience than anything. But the rain just keeps, going off and on, and that's just not what people want to see here. They just want this rain to stop. When we came out of the station just a little bit ago, the sun actually was peeking through, and I said, oh, finally we can dry out. But now you can see it's, raining here again. This is not the same situation. It is part of the county. We just came by where Lake Barton was, which I will show you next. Lake Barton has come over East Colonial, and it's actually up to people's houses. They have put sandbags, but it looks like some of them may have suffered water damage. This is just a massive, massive rain event. There is water everywhere. I have never seen anything like it here.
Shannon, thank you so much for your knowledge and your expertise in this matter. Living in that area, covering hurricanes over decades for us, knowing exactly what this usually looks like and comparing it to what the reality is now. Thank you so much. Stay safe in there in those waters. For now, though, we do have to get to the Assistant City Manager of Winter Park. We have Michelle DeValle on the phone for us. Michelle, can you hear us? You have Kirsten and Greg here from WFTV.
Yes, I'm here.
Winter Park is the city of trees. How are you holding up as it relates to storm damage throughout the city of Winter Park?
So much like Orlando and what you've recently been reporting, we're experiencing water and flooding more than we are tree damage this time. So so our city's currently implemented a curfew until 5 p.m. today to try and allow us to get out and assess the flooding damage and manage some of that. But we have about 20 trees down at this point.
So talk about your flooding. Any of the areas experiencing water into homes or structures right now, or is it mainly street flooding that are impassable?
We mainly have impassable streets and street flooding. We have learned of some homes that have taken on water, and so we're working with those homeowners as well. We're also asking homeowners to limit their water usage. Everything's fine with our water, but the sewer system is also overwhelmed in addition to the stormwater system. So we are asking people, if they can limit their water usage, to please limit that as well.
We're showing video right now. This looks like Winter Park Pines Golf Course, which is right there on 436, close to, again, the assisted living facility at Baldwin Park and State Road 436, Cimarron Boulevard. So that area has really taken on some water. It is low-lying. It is off the road. A lot of water is retained there on a regular day, but certainly this is now covering some of the fairways. I don't know if you can see this or have heard about that, but that is part of Winter Park, and Winter Park Pines neighborhood. Is that area threatened by all the rain and all the water that's now accumulated at Winter Park Pines Golf Course?
Yes, that's an area where we have a significant amount of flooding in the streets, and the golf course is basically underwater at this point. So we are closely monitoring that and trying to assist our residents in that area.
I guess the good news is to have that golf course, city-owned golf course. I know that you all recently purchased it and took it over. It is a nice bit of knowledge. No, it's holding so much water right now. But again, in Winter Park, if people have any issues, what should they do? Who should they call? Again, there will be some trees down. Are you having any? I know you've been working on your power grid there as well. After Charlie, Francis, and Jean, one final question for you. How is the power holding up in a city that now owns its own power grid?
So we're really pleased with how our power has held up during this storm. We have about 2,500 customers currently out, and we have crews out now that have started working. We've been able to get quite a few people on already this morning. If customers do have concerns or want to get in touch with the city, we're running a 24-hour call center, and the telephone number for that call center is 407-599-3494. And alternatively, you can send an email to messagecenter@cityofwinterpark.org, and that is being staffed, and we're ready to take calls and assist our citizens.
Michelle, thank you very much. Best to you, your family, and of course all of the workers that are trying to keep all of the folks of Winter Park safe, and we appreciate it. You know, historically speaking, I was through the area of Winter Park during those terrible storms that we've had, and they did a good job of keeping their arborists have, cut the trees back and made them a little bit, stronger for strong winds. And then they bought their own utility, which was something that the voters had to say yes to. It was expensive. They brought that in-house because they were losing power if there was a gust of wind. And now there was more than a gust of wind, and she said that the power really and the grid has held up in Winter Park. That's a big story about them taking ownership of something and not just relying on these larger utilities. So in Winter Park, in their instance, it appears that that is paying off today.
Certainly important to note there. I do want to reiterate, though, for those who are listening to us, because you don't have power right now and you're working off of your radios, I want to reiterate those important phone numbers and emails. Michelle told us if you have an issue in Winter Park, there's a 24-hour call center. That number, I'll do it slow so you can hear it, 407-599-3494. Again, if you have an issue, there's a 24-hour call center for those in Winter Park, 407-599-3494. They also have an email, message, msgcenter@cityofwinterpark.org. So important information, though, for those living in Winter Park.
We're going to hear from Certified Chief Meteorologist Tom Terry. He's got some images he wants to show you. But first, let's go to Seminole County. Q McCrae has been standing by. And Q, you've done a great job. You have bounced around. Every time I turn on the TV, when I wasn't on, I'm like, this guy is somewhere else. Tell us about where you are, what you're seeing, and this experience for you. You are a long-time Central Floridian in terms of knowing this local knowledge. What have you experienced today?
And you yourself live in Seminole County, Q.
Right.
So Greg, Kirsten, I'm losing my IFB, so I can barely hear you guys. It's going in and out, but I'll let you know exactly where I am right now. I am in Sanford here on 20th Avenue, and I want you to take a look at all of this flooding. There are easily 24 homes here underwater. The water is going into homes. Some of the cars here are waterlogged. And we'll take a few more steps. And, you know, as we're walking forward, if we pan a little bit to the right, you'll see to the right, you'll see the mailbox. There we go. There's the mailbox. That's just to give you an idea of how high or how deep the water here is in this area. So we're live on 20th, but the homes in this area, the homes on Grandview Avenue, Lily Court, on Glenway Drive in this neighborhood are all underwater. And what's a big red flag for the folks here is why? Well, obviously there was a hurricane, tropical storm that made its way through here, but they tell me that this area has never, ever flooded. Some of them have lived here for upwards of 40 years and have never had any type of flooding, even during our major thunderstorms over the summer. So they're suspecting there are a couple of culverts or drainage ditches that are covered right now, and that's preventing this water from going anywhere. In the meantime, their homes are soaked. We watched maybe, 10 minutes ago as the residents of the home you're looking at right now, they have about 6 dogs. They need to use the restroom. So because there's so much water here, they have to walk, and some of their dogs were doing the doggy paddle over to dry land over here so they can take care of their business. And as we're walking deeper into the neighborhood here, you'll notice the cars with the water inside of them. If we pan a little bit to the right, there's a gray Honda Accord. You know, it's been going off. The alarm's been going off for the last, 30 minutes that we've been out here. Again, the residents here, dumbfounded, never ever has this area flooded, and there's easily a couple of dozens of homes here that are just full of water at this time. So I made a couple of phone calls to Sanford Utilities and Public Works to find out exactly what they think is the matter. I haven't seen any law enforcement, any city workers, county workers in this area doing anything. And the homeowners here are concerned too about their neighborhood for obvious reasons. So we're going to stay out here, reach out again to Sanford city officials and find out if we can hopefully get some help for the folks here, because this isn't getting any better anytime soon. So that's the latest here live in Sanford. I'm Hugh McCrae. Back to you guys inside.
All right, Hugh McCrae, thank you for that report. And as we were alluding to, he lives there. Omar Isaac is his photographer. Those guys have been all over Central Florida today. And here's what's really difficult. 44 years someone lived there, and this has never happened. So how did they know what to prepare for?
Right.
Tom Terry is now with us right now with his comments on what you have now witnessed. You have seen different stories play out in different areas, Tom.
There were some parts you said, I haven't seen this in my entire career.
I don't think anybody's seen something like this, especially we go back to Donna, 1960. We had this flooding kind of in downtown, and they initiated all these plans, as we've talked about, to eliminate this from happening again. But let me just show you this full screen. This is Lake Eola, and you can see the swans that have come all the way over into that big grassy area. There's the little wedding pavilion with their seats, and we've had flash flooding in downtown. I had 8 inches of rain one day, and it was going through Shari Sushi over there near downtown Thornton Park, but I have never seen this. Unbelievable, and this just scratches the surface of what we've been reporting today.
And Tom, this is the watershed area in terms of these lakes in downtown. They can quite literally, turn a spigot that they have to lower a lake to allow for more rain. They did prepare these lakes for what was going to come their way. They're interconnected, even though this is, what they call an ancient sinkhole, Lake Eola. And so they prepared for this, but no one could prepare for this.
All the runoff. We may still get close to 20, but you remember the forecast was 15 to 20, maybe a little bit higher. We're not going to verify that simply because Ian kind of jogged a little south, okay? If it had gone along that northerly track and slowed down 1 more mile an hour, Cassie and I were talking about this, we would have another 6 inches of rain across the area.
And the reality is we had Rusty McCraney giving us the rain expectations per the different models yesterday, right? And the worst case scenario was that, 15 to 20 inches, right? And then we had Orange County Mayor Jerry Demings in his press conference yesterday saying that Orange County could see up to 2 feet of water. And that I reiterated for the audience, listen, yes, that could happen. We're preparing for that, but that's also the worst case scenario. So hopefully that ends up not being the case. But right now, like you said, it's too early to tell.
Yeah, we say, you say we're preparing for that, but how do you prepare
how?
for this?
Right.
We were talking last night about, flash flood, try to get to higher ground and all this. Where are you going to go? I mean, that's kind of part of it, too. And that's why,
Well, these poor folks just now in Q's report, they've never, ever had flooding. And so as they went to bed last night, they're like, okay, we've never had it. Why would we have it now? So
many parts of our area are seeing flooding where we haven't seen flooding before, typically in hurricanes. That, of course, kind of jogs the brain. You're going, well, I have no reason to be concerned. There's no evacuation order. I'm not in a low-lying area, XYZ. And you're going, oh, my goodness, wait a minute. There's an issue. There's water approaching my home. And that usually doesn't happen typically in these areas.
I'm not sure if this is a once in 100, once in 500 year flood
Governor
event.
DeSantis called it once in 500.
Okay, 500. So once in every 500 years, you might have this opportunity. So it's just incredible. But, this goes down to, we had Harvey, which had 2 feet. Actually, it was 48 to 52 inches of rain. Houston, Beaumont, Texas. And then we had Florence, which flooded the Carolinas. Now we've had this storm. So
what is in our favor as it relates to that? Because, again, we have some sunshine coming here. I'm going to have you think about that for a second, but President Joe Biden is speaking right now at FEMA headquarters. Let's listen in to what the president is saying.
On multiple fronts in support of FEMA's efforts. I also want to say again to everyone in Ian's path, the danger is real, to state the obvious. Please obey all warnings and directions from emergency officials. And while the water is receding, don't go outside unless you absolutely have to. It's risky for you, and it impedes first responders from doing their job. I also want to say again to the oil and gas executives, do not use this storm as an excuse to raise gasoline prices or gouge the American public. The price of oil has dropped in recent weeks. The price of gas should be going down as rapidly. It's not. My experts inform me the production of only about 160,000 barrels a day has been impacted by this storm. That's less than 2% of our country's daily production. Its small and temporary impact on oil production provides no excuse for price increases at the pump, period. If a gas station companies try to use this storm to raise prices, I'm going to ask officials to look into whether or not price gouging is going on. America is watching, and the industry should do the right thing. I expect them to do the right thing. And while we're seeing the devastating images in Florida, I want to be clear. To the people of Puerto Rico, we're not gone away. I am committed to you and the recovery of the island. We'll stand by you for however long it takes to get it done. I know the folks here at FEMA and across the federal government are working nonstop around the clock. That's why finally, I want to thank the first responders, the National Guard, the Coast Guard, service members, and the search and rescue personnel who are working to get people to safety and to restore power, water, and phone lines. And I want to thank everyone here at FEMA and other federal personnel. I've seen you in action all across the country, from the West Coast to the Northwest to the Northeast to down in Louisiana, all across this country. And just in the last 2 weeks, you've been working 24/7. No matter what and when emergencies happen, FEMA is always there. You deserve the nation's gratitude and full support. And right now, if you're in the National Guard and you get called up, you can still keep your job. But if you're in a FEMA reserve, that's not the case. That's why early this morning, I signed into law the Bipartisan Crew Act, championed in the Senate by Gary Peters and Rob Portman, in the House by Dina Titus and John Katko. And we signed it. That law will ensure that FEMA reservists have job protection just like military reservists. So when you're called up to help with the disaster, you can now focus on that mission without worrying you might lose your job, your day job, or receive some other penalty at work because of this national service. That's what the CREW Act guarantees. And it's going to help people become more civilian, gain more civilian reservists out there. And it's going to make FEMA stronger. It's going to make America stronger. That's who we are. Every time disaster strikes, emergency crews from all over the country, from across the federal government show up to help like they're doing right now in Florida. That's America, a country of women and men willing to serve, willing to leave their own families to help a stranger's family. Everyone hard at work in Florida right now deserves our thanks. And when the conditions allow it, I'm going to be going to Florida to thank them personally so we don't get in the way. I'll do our best. We're going to do our best to build Florida back as quickly as possible, but we're not going to be leaving. We're going to build it back with the state and local government. However long it takes, we're going to be there. That's my commitment to you. I want to now turn it over to Secretary Mayorkas.
Sure. Mr. President, do you plan to meet with Governor DeSantis when you're down there?
I'll meet with everybody who's around.
We listened into a portion of President Biden's address there from FEMA headquarters in Washington, D.C., and I think that the one thing that Floridians will hold the president to and will hold on to through a long recovery is we're going to build it back however long it takes. That's the headline from what President Joe Biden just said live here on Channel 9.
And certainly, and something else I want to take into account, he repeated himself 3 times. He said, do not use this storm as an excuse to gouge the American public. That was 2 executives for oil companies saying that less than 2% of the daily production of oil actually was impacted by this storm. So he made it very clear that he expects those companies not to gouge the public. He says, quote, America is watching.
All right, we are also watching to get some good news here, and I was just getting ready to ask certified meteorologist, chief meteorologist Tom Terry, what this percolation looks like. When do we expect, how long will this water take to get out of here?
Oh, that's a good question. This is probably going to be a few days for it to finally start receding. I don't have rain for another 7 after today.
That's helpful.
Hopefully 7 days. But right now, you can see how the water has just spilled over. It's all going to just depend probably basin by basin how fast it can start working down into the aquifer, which is a very slow process, and or drain off into other rivers, which are already swollen. So this will be a big, long duration event. It'll be a little faster here for these lakes. It'll be much longer for the St. Johns River, though. And look at the wind speed, still up to 90 miles an hour off the coast of Volusia County and Flagler County, where it still feels like a hurricane. We do have the center of the storm, Ian, now starting to gain some latitude, pulling away. These rain bands will continue for about another 4 to 5 hours, although the rain rates, where you see the red, that's the really heavy stuff. This is more just kind of nuisance, squally showers. This won't add too much more, probably 1 to 2 additional inches of rain to what on top of has been a catastrophic flood event. You still see showers coming through. That means it's still very squally breezy. Here's future track, and kudos to this model. This is our IBM forecast model through our vendor WSI, and it absolutely nailed this storm track. 48 hours out, that's what we've been using to show you the 20-plus potential rainfall amounts, and I think radar estimates are at least 20 inches, rain gauges 16 and up, but it continues to show the last bit of rain along the coast, but excessive storm surge. We had another high tide tonight, so everybody along the coast prepare for that as we continue to lift on up here to the north. And before I go to Cassie, I want to show you a glimmer of good news. Look at that. We don't have power, we don't have AC. We probably won't need a whole lot of it. We're going to be in the 60s for the next 7 days, incredibly early for this kind of weather, but it's after a major hurricane like this. By the way, we'll also keep an eye on this storm as it moves up into the Carolinas and stalls. The main upper level lower, what's left of it, maybe something to watch in about 8 days down the road.
Yeah.
Cassie?
You know, and I pulled this graphic in just kind of last minute to hit on what Greg was asking about. When we talk about the St. Johns River and how it's just inundated, we have 3 of our 4 spots that we're monitoring that are sitting at major flooding concerns, all of which will continue to rise. And when I was taking a look at the data and the expected forecast, we're over flood stage in all of these locations already, but not expected to crest until really Sunday and into Monday along the St. Johns River. So that just kind of puts into perspective for those of you who live along the St. John River, where we might be timeline-wise for seeing some of that water coming down for you. But I do want to take you over to some of our numbers and also hit on something that really Tom was mentioning earlier, our rain, when we talk about our radar estimated rain totals versus what our rain gauge is saying. And this is getting kind of a little super scientific and talking about surface area and crazy stuff, but we mentioned this yesterday. When you have rainfall in a rain gauge, you know, coming down on the top, you've got a circle that you're dropping into, but when we're in a tropical storm system, it's coming sideways. So you have to think those rain gauges may not be picking up all of that rain since it's not coming down directly. So just keep that in mind that maybe some of the gauges are just off just a bit. But our radar estimated rain totals, I remember this clearly as day, Tom. Last night, we were watching this batch of heavy rain. We had an arrow pointing up to the north and east, that's where it was headed. And look at some of these numbers that we've got a sampling of. Kind of hard to see because it's coming off the scale on our legend.
Yeah, nearly 20 inches. And we were talking about this. If the storm had been just a little bit slower, these numbers would obviously be higher. But fortunately, the storm took a little bit of a shortcut, as our model depicted, off of Brevard County and spared us from having another 2, 3, 4 hours of this excessive rain rate. But two-day rain totals, we just put this together, are just extreme. And these are actual rain gauges, not like estimates. But
exactly, yeah. This is actually coming out of some of our weather stations across Central Florida. And again, just keep in mind that the actual number may actually be a little bit higher just due to that surface area and how rain is collected.
And this is ridiculous.
This is big.
And this is something that Greg, we were all talking about yesterday, the winds along the coast, for a variety of reasons. This is kind of a hybrid tropical system right now. It's got a cold front wrapped up in it. We're going to be in the 60s. It is in the 60s across a lot of the area now. But that is helping to translate some of the winds, which are normally at about 3,000 feet, down to the ground, and that's because these are the numbers that I'm sampling from the live radar.
Right. A lot of these numbers are coming right now as, again, Ian, still tropical storm winds 70 miles per hour, but again, we're getting bigger winds.
Show where this thing's going.
Yeah, exactly. The track of this, it actually has it strengthening again, lifting towards the north and east and getting closer to the Carolina coast. So South Carolina is really going to be keeping an eye on this.
And of course, it goes to Charleston because everything goes to Charleston, it seems. And this storm is going to get up north. You got one more zoom up north?
I do.
Now watch this. This is going to get up here. There's Hickory, North Carolina, beautiful place. It's going to stall out because of the ridge that's still sitting up there, the colder air. And the main upper level low, I was just looking, Cassie, because I'm like, where's this rascal going after that? This may kind of rotate on back through, not as a tropical system, but as just a storm system in about 7 or 8 days. So that's something we're going to be watching. If it can't get any crazier, it probably will. But we are going to be watching this as it moves through. In the meantime, though, I'll let you continue with your tour here. We have drier weather.
We do have drier weather. No, and I just wanted to hit on that we are still tracking some of that rain steady here. You can see Lake Nona, Orlando, even up through Sanford, but continuing to get pounded by some of the heavier rain and some of those big winds that Tom was mentioning, where we've had wind gusts into the 70, even 80 mile per hour range. Also, as we talk a lot about the Volusia and Flagler County coastline, the potential for storm surge issues. We've had high tide that was at 11 o'clock this morning, but we're going to bring it back again 11 o'clock tonight. So again, we'll continue to monitor this as Ian pulls away. But like Tom, you mentioned, glass half full. You know, you feel bad saying that with that 7-day forecast behind you, but some dry time, which we're all going to need, and some fallish, I would say, maybe weather.
Yeah, normally after a hurricane, it's in August, and it's 94 degrees, and there's no relief from the heat and humidity and the rain. But look at this outlook, because we're going to be on the drier side of this low. It's already in the 60s and low 70s. We're going to pull in drier air. It's still going to be breezy tomorrow, but overall we're going to have a nice stretch of weather here for at least the next 7 days, as you can see, for our multiple recovery efforts, which will take weeks and or months.
Some folks are not seeing the bright sunny skies just yet, and it'll be a while. And Mel Holt has been in the middle of this in Brevard County, and those folks over there are still in the midst of strong wind and lots of rain.
So let's get out to her. How are you holding up? What are you seeing out there?
Well, we're holding up just fine, but we definitely aren't seeing any sunshine out here in Titusville. Right now, I just want to show you what this neighborhood looks like just behind us here. We're on Oak Hill Drive, and you can see that a lake near these homes has overflooded this entire neighborhood. This water goes all the way back on Oak Hill Drive. Now, from what we've been able to tell so far, that some of this water did make it into some of the garages here, but folks have been working hard to try to keep this water, obviously, out of homes at this point. And there's some folks there just taking a look at the neighborhood. Now, in the last few minutes, we also saw firefighters coming off of Bella Vista Drive. We were told by the city that there was an issue back there where they needed to turn off the gas because of all of this flooding that you're seeing here. We have not been able to make it back to that home as of yet. I also want to tell you, of course, when we're not checking out these neighborhoods, and there are plenty of them that look like this, we've been on the phones to officials and, every city you could think of up and down the county just to get more information. And in the last few minutes, we did speak to some folks over in Cocoa Beach, and we heard that, they're seeing flooding in various areas too, like this, along riverbanks and canals especially. They've been seeing issues on 4th Streets. Southwest of Brevard Avenue, Indian Creek Drive, Snug Harbor. They even have some traffic lights that are still out, and they're asking residents to use those as 4-way stops. They're also still assessing damage. They had one commercial building with potential structural damage, but they're still trying to check all of that out. And of course, in the 1 minute or so I've been talking, the rain is picking up again. So certainly not what anyone wants to see out here, but they're obviously dealing with this situation the best way that they can. And in just a few minutes, we should have an update from Brevard County EOC. So whatever updates they give us about some of those other areas, you see what's happening right now, we'll be sure to update you. Live here in Titusville, Melanie Holtz, Channel 9 Eyewitness News.
Mel, let's go back to Mel's shot if we could, because I want to ask her a couple of questions. She has been up and down the coast for this last couple of days. And Mel, it seems unrelenting for the most part. I know you're getting gaps where the wind's not blowing, but do you think overall Brevard County residents felt that this was going to be their impact? I mean, it's been significant in Brevard County.
I think everyone was expecting, obviously, a rain impact. And I've got to tell you, I haven't seen extensive wind damage. I've got a little feedback on my earpiece. I'm not sure what's going on here, Greg, but I'm just going to take it out for a minute. We have seen some wind impacts, trees down, power lines down. But really, for us, this is still primarily a rain event. And we've been talking about this throughout our broadcast, and that is there was already so much rain in this area already. The lagoon was swollen. Canals were swollen. So when you get this amount of rainfall and folks knew it was coming, there's simply nowhere for it to go. And this is the result. So I don't think this is surprising to anyone that lives out here on the coast. Some of them, though, haven't seen this much water since Hurricane Irma.
All right, thank you, Mel.
Greg, I don't know if you had any other questions for us.
That's good, thank you. We've got to go to an emergency operations center briefing that's happening right now. Let's go ahead and pop that up from Osceola County. And when you talk about an emergency, they are under it with flooding.
For your safety, please stay home until this problem has been resolved. We are all working together to make this possible. Thank you very much, and Mike will give the continuation of what's going on.
Thank you, Mayor. My name is Mike Steigerwald. I'm the city manager for the city of Kissimmee. We are currently undergoing extensive rescue operations in the flood areas within the city of Kissimmee. We have several major areas that have been impacted at various locations within the city's limits, as well as different types of housing units that have been impacted, ranging from single-family residences to multifamily residences to even assisted living facilities that we've had to evacuate. We're currently in the process of sheltering individuals that have been taken out of their homes and put into a safe place. We've also been transporting individuals in need of medical attention to area hospitals, along with any pets that we're able to take with them to the pet-friendly shelters. Our units are currently working quickly to get assistance to those within the impacted neighborhoods. And again, as I stated earlier, it's in various parts of the city of Kissimmee, along Mill Slough, in the North Kissimmee and Central Avenue, Columbia Avenue corridors where the city ditch is located, in the Woodside neighborhood on the west side of town, Emory Canal neighborhoods near Osceola High School, and along Shingle Creek. So we've got an extensive amount of response that we're currently working. Our police and fire units have been working side by side with the counties, sheriffs and police and fire units. And in addition, we've got additional assets from the region to assist with that rescue effort. Part of the issues that we've been having is just the extreme amount of water that has been dumped in a very short period of time in the Kissimmee area. And having the assets necessary to get to those areas has proven to be a bit of a challenge. But as I said earlier, our resources and partners have been made available to assist us through water rescue vehicles, additional ambulances, and strike teams with high water rescue equipment that can help us get to those in need. And so if you are, again, in one of those neighborhoods or in a home that's been impacted and you called 911, we have you on our list. And we're working through that list as best we can. We have removed, as I said earlier, several hundred folks, and we're continuing that effort throughout the day. Because of the impact to our first responders and the fact that we have been focusing our attention solely on rescuing those within the impacted areas, within the flood areas, the City of Kissimmee will be enacting a mandatory curfew this evening from 9 p.m. to 6 a.m. It will it'll include specific exemptions or exclusions for those essential personnel as well as individuals that need to get to work as part of their daily commute. But we urge you to be careful. A lot of our major roads are impassable, and we want to make sure that you get to your destination safely and that we don't have individuals out there just sightseeing and taking videos and things like that when really the need should be for those first responders to be able to get to the impacted neighborhoods quickly and efficiently. As always, if you have an emergency, please remember, dial 911 and we'll make sure that you're put on the list to be assisted. If it's an emergency, we'll get to you ASAP. In addition, if you have any other concerns or questions, please feel free to call the Citizen Information Center at the Osceola County Emergency Management Office, and that number is 407-742-0000, and that center is staffed 24 hours a day, and they're there to provide any answers to any questions and any assistance that you might have. Finally, we ask you prior to the enactment of the curfew tonight at 9 p.m. To please shelter in place. Keep those roads clear for our folks to get in there and do what they need to do to help those who have been most impacted by this event. And so now to deliver this message in Spanish, I would like to invite back our public information manager, Melissa Zayas Moreno. Thank you.
Thank you, City Manager. Thank you, Mayor. Nuestras brigadas continúan trabajando en los operativos de
Okay, you've been listening to the latest briefing coming out of Osceola County, and one of the big news events that happened out of that moments ago, 9 p.m. to 6 a.m., the curfew enacted in the city of Kissimmee except for essential personnel, and they're asking everyone to shelter in place. There are so many rescues, water rescues, that are happening now and still are yet to happen.
We've had Jared Oliver out there. We've had Sabrina Majori in the area. And be mindful here, this isn't Osceola County. It's City of Kissimmee specifically for that curfew, 9 p.m. to 6 a.m. That goes to show the exact area that's really experiencing the flooding. As we've seen,
Double point.
Correct. As we've seen, we spoke to, of course, Osceola County Sheriff Marcos Lopez, who says they have rescued about 200 people in that area. That's in the Buena Vista Lakes area. They've still said, 1,800 to go?
Yes.
About a foot of water in people's homes. They turned off the power because people were getting scared, understandably so, about being electrocuted in those waters. And they are going out there by boat. More resources are coming in to get all those people evacuated. So it's an effort that that's underway, and they're asking people to be calm and patient until they get to them, and to understand that you are safe, even though there may be critters in the water, other debris. Be careful not to walk around in it. Especially, they're asking people not to get out of cars. But in terms of electricity, you can be calm in that respect with those floodwaters.
And the nice thing is drinking water has not been impacted in any of the communities as far as we can tell, and in terms of the reports that are coming in. Now, a lot of reports are also coming in via social media. A lot of people are showing us some pictures. We're going to take a look at some of those. We also want to take a look at the roads. Not that people are going to be on the roads, but traffic anchor Alexa Lorenzo, who also has done just a bang-up job walking us and helping guide our viewers through this coverage with this massive event, joins us here in studio. And Alexa, you've got just some unreal images.
And Greg, I want to start with this one because this really surprised me when I saw this. This is a screenshot I took earlier of I-4. This is actually westbound at Champions Gate Boulevard. And what are you seeing? A lot of cars on the roads. We can only assume that this is a lot of people heading now back to the Gulf Coast after they came here, because we saw I-4 eastbound through the stretch of Osceola County, bumper to bumper earlier this week, people evacuating, but now we're seeing the reverse of that, people potentially going home, and we are starting to see those backups build on I-4 westbound right here around Champions Gate Boulevard. We've had a lot of focus on Lake Eola, the streets around Lake Eola. Kirsten, I remember you mentioning the water was approaching some of the streets. Done. You see it right here. It's kind of hard to tell, but where that truck is, there's that yellow line showing me this car, this vehicle is driving on the streets there right off of Lake Eola, Roslyn, Robinson. All of those streets are flooded, and the Orlando Police Department is out making sure that people stay off the roads because cars will stall through this. And this photo really paints the picture of what we're seeing. This is an iconic view of downtown Orlando. You have Lake Eola, you have that sculpture there, and it is wider. That lake is all of downtown Orlando at this point. Again, officers are making their way through there. Then we're starting to see some photos of the National Guard. This is Seminole County Fire Rescue, Little Wekiva Road, National Guardsmen moving in, not just from Florida, from other states. We have more than 5,000 in Florida, more than 2,000, and continuing to see those National Guardsmen come in from different states. Watching this, Orange County Sheriff's Office in Orla Vista right now. A lot of people are still in their homes. This water is rising, but they are knocking on the doors to see if these people want to come out, want to be rescued. They can't force these people to leave at this point, but it is a lot of encouragement to keep everyone through this area safe. We talked about getting to higher ground, and I remember Tom saying, where do you go? And this really gives you just a terrible view. This person tried to go to higher ground at Lake Lily Park right here in Maitland, and you can see that water from Lake Lily just went so high that they had to be rescued from that table top in the gazebo area there, and a heartbreaking image right here at Daytona Beach. But we want to get over to a live presser right now in Brevard County as officials begin their update.
All right, so again, that's happening now. And those pictures, Alexa, if this is going to happen, what you're showing us, and that rescue in Daytona Beach with the little kid, with
hugging.
Just hugging.
I saw
Look
that
at
on
this
social
image.
earlier, yeah.
This is what this is all about. There are so many people afraid that are being rescued, from the elderly in Shannon's report that you guys did such a wonderful job of showing us what was happening there along Cimarron Boulevard and Baldwin Park, and then this image that you found. That's why I wanted to have you do this, because you are so good on social media and finding these elements. You have found some great elements. You can continue on with your presentation if you've got some more to show us.
Alexa, if I may, this image is coming, of course, from Daytona Beach Police, and they tweeted it out saying, Detective Quinones helping to rescue people trapped by floodwaters. He is carrying her to a safe location while trying to keep her calm. Can you imagine, not only is she terrified from being rescued, but in the moment when he's, having to perform a rescue, he's being mindful of her, trying to keep her calm.
It's one of the images of the storm. This image that you are showing us now, I have complete goosebumps down my back. What an image of someone helping a child.
And if you were watching us earlier, the moment when Shannon was reporting at that nursing home facility, that handhold shot, we're seeing people in their most vulnerable moments, and officials are, of course, keeping us updated along the way.
We'll check back in. I know that you've had just a long, long day, but those images you brought us, beautiful pictures of people helping people. Let's go now to Brevard County. They are now giving us the update of the storm damage that's happening there. Let's listen in, and there's Sheriff Wayne Ivey.
Our citizens partner with us every day to keep this community safe, and this storm, I think, is a great example of that. There's, we ask people to stay off the streets, and they've done that. We ask people to continue to monitor the storm and the effects, and we're just really blessed that we have citizens that stand with us every day. So we're going to jump into the storm, and John, if you can give us kind of an update of what happened with the storm and where.
Internet signal, again, they are providing this imagery for us coming out of Brevard County right now. And again, new information coming to us. City of Winter Springs, while we're waiting for the signal, this coming to me from Alexa. City of Winter Springs now, I talked a little earlier about water was not an issue. It is now in Winter Springs. As a precaution, it's advised that all water used for drinking, brushing teeth, or food preparation, cleanup be boiled. A rolling boil of 1 minute is sufficient, or use of bottled water. So you saw people, thank you, Alexa, for people that were buying bottled water, and there's a reason why. City of Winter Springs, Seminole County, boil water notice has been issued. Again, we're trying to establish Wayne Ivey in Brevard County, and they, like many of us, are using the internet because they are providing this through, one of their social media platforms and getting the message out to Brevard County. But technically, it's difficult right now.
It really is. And with that boil water notice in Winter Springs, I want to stay in Seminole County because Sanford Police just tweeted out that due to flooding, Seminole Boulevard is closed from 1792 to Mellonville Avenue. So just be advised of that area. Also, something that I showed you earlier, we can't show it to you guys on air yet. We're seeking permission from the person who took the photo. But in Winter Springs, we got a picture, of a family who's sitting on countertops in their kitchen because the water has risen that high in their home. It's a very powerful image to see children sitting on countertops. Again, the water up to halfway to the fridge in their kitchen. They have no way to get through it safely. It's about waist high right now. So, of course, if you're a child, that's your entire body practically, right?
That image is one of the many that I'll never forget when you showed that to us, and we're trying to get that family's permission to show that children are involved in the picture. We want to make certain that we have that permission before we show it. If you've got some pictures around your property or things that you'd like to share, it's easy for you to do it. WFTV.com/share. It'll take you right there, whether it's on your phone or your computer or laptop. And I've been able to upload some images, so it's not hard at all. And you'll also be able to see, and if we could get Alexa back in place too, I want to bring in her if she has some more images. She has been doing a wonderful job of sorting through the social media story here. I asked her if she wouldn't mind doing that because I just see so many images, and we have permission in many of these instances to show that. Can we go back to Alexa as she continues? In the old days, we called this a slideshow. So if you could continue with your slideshow, we would appreciate it, Alexa.
Yeah, absolutely. We wanted to talk a little bit more about this picture, Greg, because, again, and Kirsten mentioned it, the kids that we have been seeing through all of this, they are so young, they are so resilient. And when we were in Osceola County earlier, we were seeing a family being rescued from their home. And when they were live on TV, that rescue happening, Sabrina Majore reporting that little girl, I would say maybe 6, 7 years old, she looked into the camera and smiled and waved, and they're finding moments of levity, and parents have been doing such a good job at keeping the kids busy, keeping them somewhat happy through all of this. But again, this picture, her face is blurred out, but Daytona Beach did tell us that that deputy, again, trying to keep that little girl calm. So we'll keep looking through these pictures. You can send us your pictures as well. We've made that easy for you. We'll share that link for you in just a little bit. But a lot coming in from our first responders on scene, sharing with what they're seeing, as well as people in the community just living through this disaster together.
Yeah, and thank you for that. And again, WFTV.com/share. I have seen pictures coming from all over, and they're coming to my email account. I'm trying to turn those around. That's also a good place if you want to go through and see what others have posted.
Right.
Those are also on that particular page of our website. I got a picture a little while ago, and we're going to get it on the air, but Flagler Avenue, which is very popular for folks in New Smyrna Beach and for all of us that go over and enjoy those restaurants. It is a river now from the water coming in from the rain, and also right there at Flagler Avenue in New Smyrna. And those folks are still under the gun. If we could go back to Cassandra Crimmy and Severe Weather Center 9. And Cassie, there are people, and I know there are those that are dealing right now with the rescues, but there are also those that are dealing with the reality of the wind and this massive storm that just won't let up.
No, that's right, Greg. This is a look over the last 48 hours. So this is a long, evolved storm system that has brought us, as we expected, just this almost life-changing rain during that time, 10 to 20 inches of rainfall. You can see up in Volusia County, some of our biggest, when you talk about up near Flagler, but also they still have the storm kind of beating down on them as we speak. You can see the New Smyrna number for rainfall, over 16 inches. That's coming in from an actual weather site. Daytona Beach also over 16 inches. But note this, New Smyrna, 86 mile per hour wind gusts. That's some of the biggest numbers that we've seen really across all of our viewing area. And if we look now at some of our current numbers, there's still big wind gusts happening up in Volusia County. We've got a 58 mile per hour wind gust right now coming out of Daytona Beach, and still some of those feeder bands bringing in that heavy rain. But also, we were talking earlier about this, that surge. There is the storm surge warning for parts of Flagler County, getting up closer towards Jacksonville, because the thing with these storms is they spin counterclockwise, and what that does for us is up for our coastal communities. Greg, you mentioned it. It's probably rain, but it's also probably a combination of some of this wash up as the storm now is pushing water onshore. We had that reverse effect down in Fort Myers as it made its landfall, but now on the progressive side of this, as we now push into the Atlantic, it's going to be pushing water back into our coastline. That's why we have the surge conditions and the surge problems happening up in our northern counties, especially our northern beach counties, because of this.
And you can almost see what was the eye wall there at the red spot there. Right. And again, these are strong winds. Merritt Island feeling those strong winds, Daytona Beach, Ormond Beach, all the way up to Jacksonville, New Smyrna. I have friends that are there, and they're saying this is unrelenting for them. And there's damage along the river. Boats have been ripped from their dock lines, and there's going to be significant damage in New Smyrna.
Cassie, would you say that that's falling apart at this point?
Well, you know what? We're actually expecting Ian to strengthen.
Oh, okay.
I know. So not really. Now it's going to pull away from us, and we will eventually get some relief. We're already starting to see that. You can see in our far interior zones, the villages, Groveland, Claremont, Ocala, starting to get no rain. We had all this rain through the overnight, but still from I-4 off towards the east, we continue to watch bands of light, steady to very heavy rainfall. But this is what I was mentioning, Kirsten, as it gets out into the Atlantic, we're actually expected to see it become a hurricane again as a Category 1 storm. We're currently sitting as a tropical storm, but gusts 70, 80 miles per hour. That's hurricane force winds there. Moving to the northeast at around 9 miles per hour. And if we look at the bigger picture, staying as a Category 1 as it gets closer towards the Carolinas, and then moving into parts of North Carolina where it's expected to stall out. If you've ever spent time up in North Carolina, they have mountains. We do not. So the terrain up there, when you talk about flash flooding and just the ups and downs, they're going to be watching for some significant issues there with some of the heavy rain from this storm system. But as we bring it back down closer to home, again, this is a look at early warning Doppler 9 HD. Looks like the radar there fell out for, let me just switch it over.
And as you're doing that, I just got an email. This has really been an interactive storm coverage for me. My email is easily accessible, my social media accounts. And I just got an email from someone in Holly Hill, and this is Volusia County. And they are asking for us to give them some reports of how much rain was there, but their flooding and property damages, according to Kimberly, one of our viewers, is extensive, and that's near Daytona in the Holly Hill area of Volusia County. So again, this story is different for many, but the same for all of us with these impacts.
No, and Greg, you know, for our viewers up in Volusia County, this came up from the National Weather Service. We've got pages of rain totals, and earlier we had a list. We really just had some of our 6 bigger numbers, and obviously when you're getting into that 15, 16-inch rain, 10 inches is a lot. 8 inches a lot, and you necessarily didn't make our top list. So I can go down the list here in Volusia County. New Smyrna, 15.4 inches. DeLand, almost 12 3/4. Another site in New Smyrna, over 12 inches. Edgewater, 11.5 inches. Lake Helen, almost 10.5 inches. De Leon Springs, 10 inches. And again, more recording sites from, we have a network of weather sites that actually aren't just one in Daytona. So we've got multiple coming from Daytona, Port Orange, Ormond Beach, but again, this list of maybe 15 that I'm looking at, 8 to 15.5 inches of rain for those sites, and that's for the duration of Ian. So starting yesterday, leading through the overnight and into today, and again, continuing to fall. So those numbers, they were sent out just before lunchtime from the National Weather Service. That number since then is going to be, has grown and is going to continue to grow as we still have some of that rain. Because again, this is in the metro where it's pretty on the, pretty light, and I wouldn't say gentle, but a steady rainfall, still quickly moving through. Sanford's got some steadier rainfall, also up in Oviedo.
Let's go to Volusia. I'm going to have Demi Johnson live in a second, but let's tell Demi and our viewers as we lead into her intro here what they're experiencing along the world's most famous beach right now.
Yeah, and I mean, look at that. You see Daytona Beach. We've got this heavy rainfall continuing to move on, and this is whipping inland. We've got 60 to 80 mile per hour wind gusts, and our live camera up in Daytona Beach. Let me see if I can find it for you before we take our live shot out in Daytona. It has taken a beating. It is, you know, earlier this morning we were literally watching the camera roll.
We caught that moment live of when the wind actually turned it upside down.
Right, so this is frozen in time. The camera has since stopped working because it took such a beating, but in the last frame that it caught for us, I feel like it's the Mars rover. This is the last image we got. Take a look at that. Flags barely even there.
And that's why Demi came off the coast and into higher ground and safe structure, a parking garage. Let's go back to Daytona Beach right now. And Demi, you have done a wonderful job with your photographer of staying safe. What are you experiencing now?
Hello, I don't know if you can hear me right now. I'm trying to talk. If you ask Greg if you can hear me right now, if you can believe it, this is not as bad as it was earlier. It looks really windy. We see a lot of stuff blowing around, but this is not as bad as what we saw earlier. So we thought it was safe enough to come down here and show you guys. Look at the waves. Just insane. Mateo is doing a great job standing here. I'm going to help him to make sure he doesn't fall over, but you can see just how high the water is, how crazy these waves are. And if you go this way a little bit, you can see that's ocean water, obviously, that's come up over. And again, these winds are strong, but they're not as strong as what we were seeing earlier. I don't know if you guys can hear me right now because I lost you, but if you can, we're going to send it back to you and we can try to check back in with you guys in a little bit.
Yeah, that is a 50-mile-per-hour wind that you're dealing with there, Demi. Thank you very much. You guys get back into safe harbor, and they use a parking garage for that. But that was intense, and I want to get. I'd love to hear your reaction, and Cassie here as well.
Well, here's the thing. Demi's been live for us since 3 this morning, and we've seen her go from ground to safe structures in parking garages, back to the ground. She's been very good about giving you both perspectives, while also keeping herself and Mateo, the photographer, safe, because you can see her. She was struggling in that live shot, and she was like, it's not even as bad as it was before. And we asked our meteorologists what they're experiencing, 50-mile-an-hour winds right now, and it's just tough to see her struggle. We've seen her actually just put the mic flag just to the wind, and the mic itself, we can actually hear it whistling from the wind happening there. We heard that from the ground in Daytona Beach, and then from the above structure in a parking garage, the wind just howling, and she's been going back and forth. And then, of course, we just saw her again on the ground, and we see that structure that was broken, that people just hang out around on the boardwalk there, the walkway, just broken, just tattered, and it's just tough to see what that Daytona Beach is experiencing right now.
Yeah, and so Cassie, this is an obvious question. I know what the answer is, but I do want to ask you, after you saw that, again, those are the first images in daylight we're seeing of the beach. The beach erosion is going to be just a significant problem as well.
You know, and what's crazy, when you talk about erosion, wind, water, they can do some significant damage, and water typically more damage than wind, because wind just takes a longer time to kind of chip away at things, but those are huge erosion factors. And we've seen this before along our beaches. We've seen it just when we have rough surf, erosion issues, when we've got storms hundreds of miles off our coastline. And we have one that, let me zoom out here just a little bit. We can actually see where, you know, the somewhat center still of the storm is and measure it for you. This is coming, you know, about 40 miles off our coastline. So when we talk about erosion storms hundreds of miles away, it's going to be interesting to see what we see as this storm starts to pull away now in our daylight hours.
Didn't we with Dorian, 500 miles away, have beach erosion happening here?
Oh my goodness. Well, yes, and I mean, we were talking about issues with just recent Earl.
Yeah, Earl. And I wanted to show you this, our live radar. You're talking about the winds over here.
Yes.
These are live winds, 80, 72, and these are a little bit elevated. We're about 2,000 feet with our radar beam because the earth curves away, but the winds are bringing that down. So that's kind of what the gusts are like for us along the coast. And we have friends of ours along the coast over there. They're not getting any information. They can't pick us up. And I'm like, I told my wife Selena to tell them, stay hunkered and down till sunset tonight over there, because that's when I think the heaviest rain will start to lift out. And as soon as the rain finally starts to get out of here, we'll start to bring the winds down as well. But it's still going to be gusty through tonight, and then tomorrow it's going to be a whole lot better.
When will they be able to breathe? When can they take a deep breath in Volusia and north of that in Flagler County? When do you think?
Late tonight, I would say tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, look at this, Greg. This just puts us all the way to about 11 o'clock tonight. You can see this. This is a wind gust. We changed this up last night. So 77 mile per hour wind gusts all the way through 3 o'clock. So that's still a few more hours of essentially hurricane force wind gusts, staying very high through 5 o'clock, starting to drop, but still a 50 mile per hour wind gust. That's big.
You know, at what point at 53 miles per hour, where does that category-wise, or where is that place Ian at that point?
Strong tropical storm.
Strong tropical
That's
storm.
what we're getting.
Okay.
And something we're going to have to figure out how to make this all better next time. Our forecast model that we used in-house was incredible. The GFS was not. They'll figure that out. But I do not know, Cassie, why do we not have a storm surge warning officially for the coast of Volusia County? That's what I want to know.
Yeah, I don't know why that has.
Because Flagler County has had the storm surge advisory, and we hand drew a line down through Volusia County.
Well, Flagler Avenue right now in New Smyrna, I have some friends that have sent me some pictures. It is water all the way up to, you know, Flagler Tavern and all those places. It's lapping at those businesses right now. And I can't imagine our friends. We went on that boat ride. I took you and Martha out there along the Intercoastal Waterway and the Indian River. There are a lot of homes, some of them manufactured, some of them mobile homes, some of them RVs, that any kind of surge at all is going to wipe out at least the first floor of some of these places.
Yeah, and you know, I think this complex nature of this storm, the fact that it's kind of now more of a cold hybrid kind of a hurricane, may have had a little bit to do with the little extra wind that's reaching the coast here, but this is why we hand drew this line ourselves last night for 1 to 3 additional feet. And in addition to the high tide and the wind, and that, I think that's verifying, certainly in Daytona Beach.
And to that end, I'm looking here at the Flagler County Emergency Twitter, and they're urging residents, even at this point, as of 9 minutes ago, in certain areas in mobile home parks, to evacuate, even now at 1:49 in the afternoon, because they're still seeing the effects. It's such an interesting situation we're in here. Some communities are still feeling some effects, but then but really kind of in a type of rescue recovery mode. Other areas are just right in the thick of it
I mean,
still.
you come over the Dunlawton Bridge heading into Ponce Inlet, right there at Daytona Beach Shores, and on both sides of the interstate, or the bridge, are manufactured homes in low-lying areas. Let's go back over to Brevard County. Demi Johnson. We lost her signal again. We wanted to talk with her. We lost a little bit of that established signal with her, and her photographer Mateo have really been troopers since the early hours, as all of our crews have. The good news that we can report from Central Florida as of right now, and we hope we can continue, is the lack of deaths. You know, there are some people that have been injured, you know, and we'll get to those numbers and try to verify some of that information. But again, this is the time, you know, you're curious. head out and to maybe look around, and that's a problem. That can be a real problem. So we want to underline that. I also got an email from somebody who said their power didn't go out, and they want to make sure that we let the viewers know. We told them to turn their refrigerators down so that everything can get really cold. They went into their freezer just a little while ago and everything was frozen. So again, if you are in one of those areas that wasn't a loss of power, we did ask you to, chill your freezer and your refrigerator a little bit more. You might want to go in and tweak that. Turn your sprinklers off as well. We got plenty of rain that's going to last us for months now.
We do also want to keep you alert that right now we are waiting on the governor, and he is live right now in Charlotte County. Let's take a look and listen what he has to say there in Charlotte County.
The structures, but no problem on the runway. We were happy to see the interstates are flowing on I-75 north and south. We were able to talk with the folks here in Charlotte County at the Emergency Operations Center, EM Director, Sheriff, some of the local officials. We're also able to go out and tour some of the areas in Charlotte County and inspect some of the damage. From the wee hours of the morning, there have been people that have descended on Southwest Florida to be able to offer assistance. And so we've seen a number of efforts on the barrier islands to bring people to safety, particularly in Lee County, but also in Charlotte and in Naples and in Collier County. And you have people, the electrical, the power, they're all here. We have Eric Szilagyi from Florida Power and Light, which he'll give an update on what they're doing. But from the minute they could get in here, they've been in here working on being able to get people connected again. I've talked to two of the major CEOs for the telecom companies about their restoration services, and unfortunately, some of their infrastructure has done okay. They do more our DEM is also putting the mobile cell phone towers to be able to help restore communications, and we've got an inordinate amount of food and water that is either here or is very close on the way. Life safety, of course, is critical. Anyone stranded on one of those barrier islands want to make sure that they're safe. And I know here in Charlotte, any of the neighborhoods that experienced a lot of wind or water damage, these folks are there. They're working to make sure people are safe, and that is true in Lee and Collier County as well. So that's really, really important. We also got to just stabilize the area with these key services, and so we've got a huge amount of resources that have been brought to bear to be able to do that, and we're going to continue doing it. This is going to be a 24/7 operation because we realize how important it is. We also understand there's a lot of people that have asked what they can do to help the people of the state of Florida, particularly down in this region, and the First Lady will talk in a minute, but we have a fund, FloridaDisasterFund.org, FloridaDisasterFund.org. You text disaster to 20222. You can make a contribution, and at the end of the day, we've got supplies that have been pre-staged that are being used, and that's important. We don't necessarily need people to send us stuff. What we need is to be able to help those relief organizations help the folks. I mean, we're surveying the damage right now. Some people that evacuated, they're going to go back and look at their homes and see, is there flood damage? Is there wind damage? Is it going to be habitable? And so all those things, as those happen, we're going to get a clearer picture of some of the unique needs that individuals in this region may have. And so your financial contribution can make a world of difference. And so we're happy that so many people have done. I think we're over $2 million already within less than 24 hours, and I know many more people want to do. But I'm really impressed with the resiliency that we're seeing here in Charlotte County. This is not anything anyone wanted to deal with. I mean, if you go back 72 hours before landfall, most of Southwest Florida was not even in the cone, and then you have a situation where you're staring down the barrel of a hurricane making landfall at 155 miles an hour. So the response here and just the way people have reacted has been very, very impressive, and we understand this is just the beginning. There's a lot more that's going to need to be done, and the state of Florida is going to be good partners with the folks here at the local level. I'm going to let the First Lady talk about relief efforts, and then we'll have Kevin Guthrie, and then Eric Szilagyi from FP&L will give an update on the power situation.
No, I just have to echo that. We are just so proud of the people of Southwest Florida, the resiliency and the courage and strength that you're exhibiting, the people here at the Emergency Operations Center, and frankly, people across the state of Florida. We just couldn't be not more proud of what you have done to support your fellow Floridians and also the people across the country. So the governor mentioned a second ago the Disaster Recovery Fund, disasterrecoveryfund.org. You can donate there. It's a 501c3. Why that's important, again, is because we can take those resources and micro-target them and get them directly to the ground as quickly and efficiently as possible. As I said this morning, and I reiterate this, we're going to cut through any red tape and bureaucracy because we know people need those funds and they need help. And so we're really committed to making sure that we do that. The other thing is you can text disaster to 20222. Those funds will obviously go to the same spot, and we'll be able to deploy those resources very quickly. But again, on behalf of the state of Florida and the governor, myself, all the people, the first responders, the EOC, thank you to the people across the state and the country for stepping up big. We are at $1.6 million, less than 24 hours after we launched the fund. That was at 8 a.m. this morning. We are well over $2 million as of a little while ago, and I think we're going to have even more funds at the end of the day. And again, that goes directly to the great people here in Southwest Florida and all the way across the state. So God bless you.
Yeah, thanks. And some of the responders who are ready, the storm has got to go before you can really get in there because it's very hazardous. And some of these guys are coming across Alligator Alley like midnight, like literally knocking on the door of tropical storm to be able to get in and help people. And so you look at these USAR teams that we've had over from Miami-Dade. We want to thank them, thank the National Guard, thank the Coast Guard. They've been able to do a lot of successful missions already, and it's really been great to see everybody working together. Part of the reason that happens is because of the coordination at the state level, and that's under the direction of Kevin Guthrie, who's our emergency management director, and he's going to provide an update.
All right, thank you, Governor. So I got here first thing with the governor, obviously talked to Sheriff Crummell, talked to the fire chief, talked to emergency management director Patrick Fuller. Obviously, everyone very thankful of the resources that have been provided. There were a handful of missions that have just come up in the last couple of minutes. I'm proud to report that we are already mobilizing personnel for those missions and also providing the resources. One of those is a generator, so that has already been sourced and already being mobilized. So we hope to have that here by midnight tonight on the generator at a minimum. The mechanic for the generator that's in question, that is having some issues, is already only 30 minutes out. So I'm very, very proud of the men and women in our logistics section, specifically at the Florida Division of Emergency Management. They have been very, very flexible, and they have been very, very responsive and far exceeding our expectations in a normal disaster like this. So to have a mechanic almost 30 minutes away when you make a request about an hour ago is just fantastic. So again, that comes from great leadership, and it starts with the governor, and I really appreciate that. Thank you, sir.
Great. Part of the preparations for this storm was to have as many resources pre-staged that could go in and help with critical infrastructure like power. And we were able to go meet with some of the linemen up in Lake City in North Florida, thank them. These are people coming from all over the country. I mean, they're coming from Louisiana, Alabama, Texas, and we had over 42,000 at landfall. I'm sure there's more in the state right now. When we were going back to Tallahassee from Lake City, you saw truck after truck after truck on I-10 eastbound coming in to be able to help respond to this. And part of the reason we're able to do that is because we've got a lot of utilities that this isn't their first rodeo. They take this very seriously. They learn from past storms, and they put that knowledge to good use. And so Florida Power and Light has the biggest footprint of personnel that have been brought into the state to help get everybody back. And Eric Szilagyi is here, who's the president of FPL, and he's going to provide an update on their efforts.
Thank you, Governor. So we have deployed about 20,000 crews across the state of Florida. Just to remind you, the storm is still battering the northeast part of the state. Daytona is being hit right now. We have about 1.2 million customers who are out of power. But we have been able to restore over 700,000 customers before the storm has even left the state, and we're going to continue to work 24/7 to do so. I'm actually pleased with parts of the system that I've seen a little bit further to the west of here is in good shape. At FPL, we did not lose one single transmission tower, so that is critical. The backbone is up and operational. We are now in the process of getting the distribution system back up and the substations that had flying debris go into them. cleared out so we can get them back online. There are sections of our territory close to the beach along the Barrier Islands that will require rebuilding. There are some destructive areas that simply cannot be repaired, and they'll have to be rebuilt. Unfortunately, there are also homes and businesses that will simply not be able to safely take the power once it's ready. But the 20,000 plus men and women who are already here are staging and getting out in the field currently. They will work 24/7 until we get the lights back on. Again, as the governor said, not our first rodeo, but every storm is also different and always poses different challenges. But appreciate all the support from the state. Governor, thank you. From local law enforcement as well, the National Guard. This is a team sport and a team effort, and we're going to all work together until we get Florida back up on her feet and where we all want her to be. Thank you.
And when they're when FPL and the other companies have crews in, the extent to which that infrastructure has remained is just critical, because it's a lot easier for them to reconnect an existing system than to have to rebuild it. So to see some of that was able to withstand is encouraging. It's also just a testament. I mean, some of these folks put money into the resilience of the infrastructure, and this is like the ultimate test. I mean, you got a hurricane that's a massive hurricane coming in at 155 miles an hour, producing this type of storm surge, dumping rain, causing flooding. If you can make it through that, then you probably did it pretty good. And so this is a 24/7 effort to stabilize and to restore. And so we're going to do whatever we can to assist with that effort. And so I'm happy to take a few questions.
Governor, in our area, Sanibel Islands, Fort Myers Beach, the images are devastating. And we know that from our local agencies that there have been confirmed deaths. We don't know exactly how many. What have you heard from the local agencies about the scope of the tragedy in that sense?
Well, Sanibel is destruction. For those of you who haven't been, it's a beautiful place, really neat community, and it got hit with really biblical storm surge, and it washed away roads, it washed away structures that were not new and could withstand that. There have been a number of people that have been identified and brought off the island safely, and those efforts are ongoing. Not only with the Coast Guard has been involved with that, our USAR teams, and as well as local law enforcement. I think most people have seen the images of the bridge, the causeway going out to Sanibel, where you have destruction of that. And that's something that we obviously will rebuild, but that's not something that will happen overnight. And so most of what's being done to assist is air operations, since you can't get there on the ground. I think Kevin will probably have more boats head over there as well. But the important thing is I was able to speak to the mayor this morning, and she and her key staff did evacuate, and so they've been operating off more of the mainland in Lee County, and many people did leave Sanibel, and they did heed the call, which is good. Obviously, I think it's a very seasonal community. We're not quite in the high season yet, but I think she made the point, hey, it's Florida. More people want to be here year-round now, so you do have a contingent of people that stay there over the summer. So that's going to require a lot of effort to get that back. Because they took a huge wall up. And it's interesting. I mean, you can look a span of like 40, 50 miles, some places that got the storm surge versus some other barrier islands, much less. And that's just kind of the way some of this goes. But those were really difficult images to see, especially just given that's a place that I've been fortunate enough to go out and have some friends and do events there in the past, and really a great part of the Southwest Florida community. But we're committed to restoring the infrastructure as needed. That is not going to be an overnight task. That is going to be something that is going to require a lot of love and care. It's going to require a lot of resources, but we're going to do it because we understand how important it is.
Governor, piggybacking off of that, Governor, what are some of the federal and state funds available to make that happen, to kind of speed this up?
Well, in terms of infrastructure, I think, Kevin can, and we also have Gracia Check from FEMA who's here. We've gotten approved for 30 days they approved us?
30 days on Category B and A at 100%. 100%.
Okay, and that's more of like the immediate.
So that's on the public assistance side, but this particular county is under an individual assistance major disaster declaration, so we will set up the disaster recovery centers, and we'll have people be able to register for that.
So that's on an individual basis, and so somebody loses their house and they may need temporary assistance, a hotel accommodation, something like that, they're going to be able to do. Jimmy Petronas, who's here, our CFO, as part of those recovery centers, they're going to have insurance villages. If you look at what Lee County had to deal with, these are massive, massive flood events. And so most of these people who have mortgages and they're in a flood zone probably had to have flood insurance. So they're going to have people that could help with those flood claims. You also have wind damage with the traditional homeowners insurance policy. So that's going to be important. In terms of the overall infrastructure, obviously, we'll seek federal support for that, but we're also, Florida, we're well positioned financially right now to get through this. I mean, we have the largest budget surplus we've ever had, and we've worked very hard, of course, to keep the economy open and make this a state people wanted to be in. And so we're seeing historic reserves, even as we've continued to break records with the revenue coming in with no income tax and low taxes. They revised it in August saying, okay, Florida's getting more revenue. And then in September, we're like $300 million over what they estimated. So we have put an emphasis on infrastructure, partially because the state is growing, but we understand in a situation like this. We had a bridge knocked out with Hurricane Sally because you had a barge that was left loose and it rammed the bridge. So we were able to fix that, but it's not something that happens overnight. So to me, I think the more issue is we'll have resources between federal and state and local. I'm pretty confident of that. But it's, okay, this is an island that you're not going to be able to access by car until that is done. And so what's going to be the plan to do? And that's just going to be something we're going to consult with the local leaders at the city level and at the county level to try to figure out what the best is. But, when you deal with these things, you stabilize, you provide the help with people, but you want to get back to some semblance of normalcy as quickly as possible. And it's going to be harder in some areas than others, but I want to, let's work on Sanibel and let's bring it back to where it was as soon as we can.
Governor, for properties that were totally wiped out, how should it be determined if flood insurance or wind coverage should be appropriate, and how was that determined during Mexico Beach?
Well, so that's kind of an age-old thing on these storms. I mean, you'll have disputes because obviously if you have both policies and you file a flood claim, the flood is going to want you to file the wind claim. The wind is going to want you to file the flood claim. What I would say is when you have surge that's 10, 14 feet, when you have 6 feet of water in somebody's home, to me, that's a flood claim. And it doesn't mean that they may not have also suffered wind damage, because as we know, it was a really significant thing. But wind alone is not going to cause the 6 feet of water. I mean, that's a flood event. And it's not just in the barrier islands, which of course had a lot. You go in some of the places in Lee County, that are close to the river and some of these inlets, you had massive, massive rising waters. And so that's just something we do. I mean, that's what was happening with some of the folks who did not do the evacuation. They were hunkering down, and their homes, I think, were totally fine to handle even a really strong wind event. The problem is if the water is rising, you're in your living room, it's a foot, 2 feet, 3 feet. They're the ones that were calling saying, hey, this is a big problem, and of course it is. So I think at the end of the day, in Lee County, I think most of the claims are going to be flood claims. I think in Charlotte, maybe the mix will be a little bit different because I did see, some wind damage, and I think that those claims would be appropriate. But clearly, when you're in those flood areas and you have the water rising like that into your living room, that is a flood.
Governor, speaking to people today about the insurance, they worry, sometimes, the insurance companies will shuffle their feet on a normal stance, on a normal situation. Now we have this where everyone's going to be flooding the insurance companies. What's your message to those people who might be worried that the insurance companies might not be acting fast enough?
Well, Jimmy, where's Jimmy at? Yeah, so, and I'll let him say, but, part of the disaster recovery are these insurance villages. He's done a great job of leading. He's getting the carriers all together. They're going to have a footprint in all these affected counties. People are going to be able to go and they're going to file claims. There's already been things done with our insurance regulation agency. Go back 10 days, none of those cancellations are valid, and you can't cancel going forward for another couple of months. So there's already actions being taken. But I'll let Jimmy come up and do that. And look, at the end of the day, we've had a lot of issues with property insurance, but a lot of that is because of lawsuits and a lot of things that don't focus on the core business. This is the core business of paying these claims, and we understand the time is of the essence.
Thanks, Governor.
Yep.
So we've got a preliminary site set up. We'll make sure it's coordinated with Kevin Guthrie's team in the county, but we'll probably pick a large spot. Initially, insurance carriers will come in. We'll probably have somewhere between 20 and 25 carriers come in. They'll probably set up in RVs, and they will start writing checks initially that will be living expense money. This will be the dollars just to help people go find a place to live, sustenance dollars. Then you'll be signed up where adjusters will come and inspect the damage. Now, here's the most important thing I need you to take away from this conversation is the predators that are going to come up, that are going to initially try to sign up construction management contracts, public adjusters. They're going to come in like a bunch of locusts, and they're going to try to hit the neighborhoods, and people are vulnerable right now. They're going to look for a solution, and their solution is always going to be important, but that solution is not going to be knocking on the door every time. If it sounds too good to be true, it is. So please, that first phone call that you're going to make needs to be to either your agent, your carrier, or to my office at 1-877-MY-FLCFO. If one of the first three phone calls you make in your house in order to get insurance claim solved is to one of those threes, there's almost zero chance you can be taken advantage of. But Panama City was my hometown. I lived through Hurricane Michael. We did 12 insurance villages there over a year span. So we're going to be here bringing the carriers back, and they will write checks on site, okay? But when you start complicating the claim because you've allowed predators to get involved with your claim, you're going to drag it out. So the best solution is between you, your carrier, and us. The more people you bring into it, the harder it's going to be to get a settlement that's going to be fair for everybody. And look, at the end of the day, if your carrier doesn't want to work with you, that's when you'll call my office and we'll take them to task.
And I think what I've asked Jimmy to do is also, have people with assistance for the National Flood Insurance Program claims. They obviously have their homeowners policy. Many people have both. But I think the issue is that some people live in areas where they're told you don't need flood, and so they don't do it. Well, now they may be in a situation where that is so. But bottom line is those who have the flood insurance want them to be able to file those claims. Take pictures of the damage of your home and have those so that you can present those and so you can get paid quicker. If you took pictures of the water line, if you have 4 feet of water, you took pictures, bring that with you. If the water's gone down but you see where the line was, take pictures and document that so that you can go in, present it, and there's not going to be any questions. But Jimmy made a good point. You start signing up. Some of these people will swoop in, and they'll want you to sign this stuff. It just hasn't worked out well in the past in Florida. Unfortunately, when you have disasters, there's some people that want to prey on people when they're in vulnerable situations, and we do not want that. The other thing I would also say, just from looking at some of the images that we've seen on TV, there's going to be a lot of automobile insurance claims potentially. I could tell you, my wife, we lost a car in Irma, and thank God we had USAA because they literally cut us a check very quickly. So hopefully all the auto insurance are going to be able to do that. But we literally we're seeing cars washed away, cars totally submerged. And so we understand that people are going to need to be able to get that claim. But when we did it with Irma, we got the check within like a week. They came out, they did it, they gave us the check. And, honestly, it's not like losing a car only is like the worst thing in the world. I mean, we were fine, but I mean, to be able to have that, you know what you have to do. You need to buy a new car. You need to do. So I appreciate what Jimmy's doing. I think it's important to get the carriers in to let people go, make these claims, and let's get these things processed as quickly as possible. All right, thanks.
Again, you've been watching the news conference. This one not in Tallahassee, but down in Charlotte County, where again we saw the brunt of that down in the Fort Myers area, and talked about possibility of just trying to rebuild Little Sanibel Island and amongst the other issues. And I thought Jimmy Petronas, the state CFO, said it best. He said the people that are going to come in and take advantage of those who have been impacted will be like a bunch of locusts. So again, be careful of that. All of us will be trying to get some help and just be careful as you go through that. There are some numbers that you can call to verify. But again, it's going to be an issue.
And no doubt scammers be coming in to try to take advantage of the people who've been through so much with what Ian did. Again, the governor speaking in Punta Gorda, Charlotte County, that has just seen catastrophic flooding, damage. You know, we've been getting reports of the hundreds of people who are stranded, calling in saying they need help, but right now it's just too dangerous for rescue crews to go out to get to these people who really are in a desperate situation.
All right, let's go to Daytona Beach, where it has just been relentless. And Demi Johnson joins us live. Demi, again, you are in the midst of what is a significant band of this tropical storm that won't let up.
Yes, Greg, I wanted to try this one more time because I know you didn't lose me, but I lost you last time, and I figured you guys would want to talk about some things. We're going to try to show you what we're seeing here right now. The waves are just so intense. So intense. And I'm going to be quiet because I think it's interesting when you can hear the wind gusts. It's just like a constant tunnel of wind out here. We want you to try to see the pier, if we can show you. I don't know how well you'll be able to see it. And I'm going to also talk about some things that I know you can't see, but what we've seen out here. So we've noticed that the water is obviously well past the beach line. It's way up to the wall. Part of the gate, part of the guards for the gate have broken off. We've seen some of the wooden sticks, wooden poles that are on the beach. They're now floating around in the ocean. Not floating, they're ripping around in the ocean. So we saw the lifeguard chair is down. There's a lot of debris around. And I know it looks crazy out here, but I promise you this is nothing like what we saw this morning. This is strong wind, it's gusty, but it's not like it was earlier.
Been, Demi, so relentless on you and your photographer, Mateo, that you all have gone into parking garages for protection on occasion. Talk about the issue that you're seeing behind you. That's the band shell that's a little bit over your left shoulder there. That's a very popular place on the world's most famous beach. We see that right there. Have you seen any other damage to the seawall? I know that protects these hotels, and I believe that could be the Hard Rock Hotel right in there, if I'm not mistaken. That's at least one of the hotels.
Bit, yeah.
Maybe that's down a little bit, but
I think it's the Hilton.
Yeah.
Is it the Hilton? It's the Hilton.
This is our first time really walking down here. It hasn't been safe until now, but I mean, just look. This is part of the wall right there. I mean, you have big concrete chunks broken off, so it shows you how strong that wind and the seawall has been, or the waves have been hitting up against the seawall today. Mostly inside of here, it's just a lot of debris. But these businesses, we do know for a fact, we showed you video earlier, these businesses are damaged. We saw right up there, you can see that door is broken off the hinges. We've seen broken windows. So I don't know if you guys, I can't hear you anymore, but I don't know if you can still hear me. But yeah, so just a lot of damage and debris to businesses. So, okay.
All right.
Okay, so I know you can still hear me.
We can hear you. We can hear you.
Oh, okay. Okay, all right.
So Tom and...
No, you're doing a great job. But again, you know, seeing the debris that Mateo was showing our viewers, our photographer, you know, that's the concern. What's fallen, what's happening, what the wind's picking up right now, because as you can see from our live shot, it is still windy out there right now.
And I want to bring back in Tom and Cassandra. Thank you very much, Demi, for that. And again, this is an event along the Volusia County, Flagler County coast and Brevard County, but really up there that I'm not certain any people really thought was going to be this long lasting with the wind.
Now we're on the back side of this particular storm, and the storm kind of went offshore of Brevard County instead of like off of Volusia County, or we would have had more of these kind of hurricane wind gusts right through Metro Atlanta. We would have had a lot more trees down. Instead, we traded that for flooding, and I'm not wanting to trade that at all because the flooding is going to be relentless. So rest of today, 70 to 80 mile an hour wind gusts along the coast. The rain will start to taper off after sunset tonight, and will be drying out for probably a week. So that's great news. We're also going to be drying things out and cooling things down. So if you don't have power, you don't have AC, you're going to be okay. It's going to feel like fall for us. This is Lake Eola. Again, it has overgone its banks. If you're just catching this video, these are the swans that normally are over here. Now they're off-site, so to speak, claiming new territory. So that's the current picture in downtown Orlando. We have a wind gust 61 Titusville. I had a friend of mine, Chuck, over in Cocoa Beach saying, what in the world just happened? They're on the back edge of this with some rain bands, 63 wind gusts there, but the winds are much less inland because we don't have the rain. As I talked so much about with the other Mets over the last 3 days, the rain carries, that weight from the raindrops carries that wind down to the surface, and you can still see the last little bit of rain here along the coast. The storm itself is still a strong tropical storm of 70 miles per hour, but it's starting to get intertwined with dry air and get into this front, and that's why things are going to be cooler and it's going to be drier. But we still have this storm surge warning along the coast, and we kind of hand drew this line ourselves to include Volusia and Brevard County, even though no official storm surge warning was issued. And Cassie, now that we're getting behind the storm, which will be improving greatly by tomorrow, folks will be without power. We have a lot of safety tips.
That's right. You know, yesterday we were talking a lot about what you should be doing during the storm and what you should be doing after the storm to essentially plan ahead. Now we're in that after the storm part for many of our residents. Again, still parts of Volusia County, Flagler County, still within that storm. So again, stay away from doors and windows during the remainder of today. But if we talk about what to do moving forward, I know it's very enticing to try to step outside and check damage, to head on over to the neighbors. Stay away from debris. Again, when we talk about down power lines, it is difficult, if not impossible, to tell what has a charge and what doesn't. Also, a good conductor of electricity, water, and there's a lot of standing water around. So really try to stay indoors and away from the debris, away from the power lines. And a lot of our I should say viewers, are maybe now listeners, or watching us from the WFTV news app or on WDVO, our radio partners, and listening to this as due to the power outages. So generators, those are going to be firing up if they haven't already been fired up today, likely in the next couple of days as we continue to see some of these power outages. And again, key with those generators, the safety of them. We've seen it before in many of these tropical systems, whether it's a tropical storm or hurricane, kind of the after effects when it comes to injuries and even fatalities are really heavy on the after the storm impacts. And generators do play a key role in that. Carbon monoxide poisoning, keep those generators outside. And that even means keeping them away from windows. You know, you have to have the window open to have the cords running into your home to be powering the devices or the appliances that you're choosing. So do keep that in mind and document damage. If you were listening or watching us earlier when Governor DeSantis was speaking, he said that same exact thing, emphasis, document, document, document. And again, do it safely. If you're indoors, try to take pictures of those water lines where the water has rushed in. I'm sure many of you were taking pictures of that through the overnight or early this morning as it happened. But you heard Tom mention tonight, we're going to continue to see this squally weather, the gusty winds at the coast. So I'm showing you Severe Weather Center 9 Future Track, which did a really good job of pinpointing kind of the track of the system, the storm, even the rain totals for us as we look back at our forecast from the last couple of days. So this is later this afternoon at around 3:30. You can see really our western, I'd say about half, maybe a third is on the dry side, but still a little breezy. Seminole, Volusia, Flagler County, even northern Brevard County still getting those fast passing showers. Here we are just before 7 o'clock. A lot more of that rain continues to push off towards the north and east, but still areas like Volusia County, Flagler County getting some of that rain. And even continuing some of those passing showers as we head into the 11 o'clock hour, although they will be much more spotty or sparse as we head into the late night hours. But look at the rest of Central Florida getting to dry out. That will be the trend that we will have as we move into Friday, which Tom was mentioning. And you can see we put together this timeline. This is up in Daytona. This gets us from 4 o'clock tonight to midnight. Rain chances starting to taper off, but still around through the late night hours. Winds, though, they're going to be the strongest really from now through about 6 o'clock. We're still getting in that very strong tropical storm force. This is right on the threshold of hurricane force wind gusts, which we have seen. We'll have some of those numbers, some of our wind reports coming up for you, but 74 mile per hour wind gusts still expected in Daytona around 4 o'clock. We head into the late night hours, the rain will start to taper off. Winds, though, still very gusty at 50 miles per hour. And as we move down into the metro area, the wind's telling a little bit different story because we in Orlando will be getting further away from the storm, whereas Daytona will still be closer to the storm during that same time frame. So 8, 10, midnight, you can see our wind gusts down into the 30-mile-per-hour range. So still breezy to gusty, and our rain chance you can see really tapering off as we head towards the evening. And then, Tom, I don't think you sent this, but take a look at this forecast as we move forward.
We spent so much time calibrating storm tracks and model guidance and all of this with the storm that I was frankly a little bit pleasantly surprised when I saw the outlook over the next 7 days, because this is going to be so huge for obviously not getting any additional rainfall, because the rivers are going to still slowly fill in, especially along the St. Johns. The Wekiva River is already flooding right now, and that is continuing to rise. All of our retention ponds, everything is flowing somewhere, and it's not going to be flowing out quickly, but we have very pleasant, very fall-like weather on the way, starting right now. And as the rain moves out along the coast later tonight, it'll still be breezy a little bit tomorrow, but it will certainly feel very pleasant compared to the last 72 hours. I've got mid-60s tonight. This is for Metro Orlando. Low 80s and sunshine tomorrow. So if you don't have power, if you can perhaps get through without firing up the generator because you're going to try to get that air conditioner running, you may not have to do so tomorrow. And again, wait till the rain stops before you go out and try to fire up a generator along the coast. You don't want to be out there in the rain with that. But you can see here the outlook through the upcoming weekend. I wish we had not all of these problems to deal with so we could really enjoy this kind of weather. But this is going to be, I guess, the best thing that we could hope for after this storm to give us some good weather for a lot of recovery, which will take weeks, months.
Yeah, so many people right now without power throughout our community. In fact, millions throughout our state. So you providing us with a cooler weather for folks right now, because it's going to be a while for many people before they get their power back on.
Getting a lot of emails and questions regarding flooding. I mean, Samaritan Village is one of the areas that we're so concerned about, or La Vista. Some of those areas, the rescues are happening right now, and therefore they're keeping us back a little bit, but we're seeing some of those images coming to us on social media. So again, as maybe you're worried about your power or your, maybe your water, you're having to boil that, and those issues, there are some people right now that quite literally in our area are going through life and death situations in terms of the rescue. We don't anticipate people passing away from this, but certainly they are frightened right now. So again, we're going to try to turn our attention to those efforts as people again are being rescued. Thousands of people still need help because the water came up so quickly. Let's take a live look at downtown Orlando. We're going to check in with some of our crews who are trying to get us the most information and accurate information regarding those high water rescues happening right now across Orlando.
Look at all the
And
swans.
the Kissimmee area. And the swans are enjoying
There they are.
much larger Lake Eola.